Okay, so on the smallest end, I got gem pop guys who just like want to get back in shape. Then another small end on the top end are those guys who are just going to the next. I got the guys in the middle of the road who are D1 football players, businesses, families, kids, got out of shape, only know the D1 gym room. And they introduced them to something totally different. The program that designed where you optimize body fat loss, sculpt your body, utilizing bodybuilding movements, not fucking burpees and running on a treadmill. Nobody loves that. These guys want to lift with their meatheads. So I designed programs that are for meatheads to burn body fat. So really like the hypertrophy and looking good and being strong as well, that's my lane.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Vinny Iuzzi. Now, here's the first question. How do you really say your full name?
Vincent Iuzzolino. If you want to really pronounce it correctly, it's like pizza. Iuzzolino.
That's not bad. Iuzzolino. That's
Iuzzolino.
Not bad. That's not bad at all.
Well, it's always the I silent. So going through school, everybody, Iuzzolino, Iuzzolino. I'm like, I silent, Iuzzolino.
But Uzi is just way better.
So how I came up with that, right? I'm not like I was like one of the first people to have an iPhone, social media. My friend Sean was putting together my page and we thought of a name real quick. He just popped off Vinny Iuzzi. And it stuck like glue. People are like, yo, you got a dope name. I'm like, oh, I guess.
Yeah, so it's just like that.
Just like that, I swear. Didn't like think about it. It was just 1 second option choice. And that was it. That's how it came to.
All right, so if we're to dial way back, how did the channel start or the Instagram start? But even going back further than that, because your background is in construction.
Yeah.
But you've been training since what, you're 8?
I started working out. Literally, I was always obsessed with I must have had this in my mind, like wrestling figures, little muscle figures, these mini wrestlers, G.I. Joes. I started actually lifting weights when I was probably like 12. I wrestled in middle school. I'll always remember this, and I always had like a natural, lean, Bruce Lee type of body, good genetics. And I won. And I remember I popped off my singlet. And I looked over at the table with the girls judge and they're all smiling, like, because I had abs in the chest. I'm like, oh, I like this. I started doing push-ups, pull-ups. Body developed quick, and my dad bought my first Joe Weider set, the home set, and it went on from there. And I used to get a pump, go to a party, get a pump, go hang out with my shirt on and shit. But that's how it started,
And then upon graduation, did you go into the construction union at that point?
So my whole family is union electricians, New York City, commercial electrician working in these big buildings. My uncles, my grandfather, everyone did it, right? But my dad actually drove a gasoline truck for some years. But anyway, that's how I got into construction. And I did it for almost 2 decades, traveling into the city. I don't live that far. I live about 40 minutes from the city, working all day, boots, the whole 9, wearing neons and shit, working 30 stories up, cold, hot, deck jobs. So it's different than a residential electrician because that's kind of like the only electrician that you're familiar with. So I was a commercial electrician. So I was a deck electrician. So the deck, I always tell the story. The deck is the Q deck. So if you think about how a building goes up, the concrete floors, they don't just miraculously appear square, they get molded, right? Yeah. So essentially it's a giant, certain kind of composite type of plywood that's shaped. So they do the pour. And on there is where all the pipes are weaved in between. So how's that mold stay on top? There's 4x4s on the floor above. I'm talking every 2 feet. You take a wooden ladder up to the top and then it's a different world up there. I call it the pirate ship. So you know what a lather is? Do you know what steel lathers are? Those are the guys who lay the first. So let's just say this is the deck. They lay the first layer of rebar. Then we come along. There's drawings all over. We lay out pipes in. And then they lay a second layer of rebar on top with a chair rail. But it's a race. No, they have someone on the megaphone yelling at them. It's all ex-convicts. The only job you got making $60 an hour. Right out of prison, $60. It's brutal. They're laying down the rebar. They're halfway through. We start going. They get to the end. If you forget a pipe, you're like, fuck. You have to go back and weave it in between and shit. Yeah, I did that. And then I was also on so when you're on the deck, you also do big switch gear. So I was on big wire pulls. So the wire diameter was about the size of a bar on a 45-pound bar. So imagine 5 of those. It's not light.
No, they're heavy.
The reels are thousands of pounds. But you don't pull it manually. There's something called a super tugger that pulls it with a rope. It's all set up through pipes. Guys are walkie-talkies, got a greaser, greasing the wire. But now, like back 20-something years ago, now they have pulleys in some areas where you couldn't use pulleys. I was the manual guy sometimes feeding it around some cumbersome corners. And that's actually the one thing I still have is grip strength. And I didn't know how strong my grip was. And about a month ago, I was in the gym and there's some big guys in the gym. And I was just messing around. I go, I want to see you deadlift that. And I deadlifted what he couldn't do with 2 fingers. It was like 185 or 225. I did it with 2 fingers. And it fell out of his hands. I'm like, oh, I still got my grip strength.
Yeah.
Nothing else though.
There's so just for a bit back, my parents ran commercial electricians contractors for their whole lives basically. So I've spent a bit of time on those, maybe not the same size of construction sites, but being around the type of people that work in those environments, like there is a unique type of workman strength that I think goes very much underappreciated. You know, like they're not necessarily lifting maximal loads, but they're lifting heavy loads in odd angles, in odd ways, and just for hours.
Yes.
And almost to the point where it looks effortless, you know? And when usually talking like not big guys, right? Like wiry, semi-muscular looking.
With a cigarette hanging out of the mouth.
Yeah, but they're carrying those armored cables and they make it look so easy. And you go pick it up and you're like, what the? And they're just walking up and down the stairs with them or just walking around the floor plans with them as if they're
couldn't bench press 225.
No,
but they could hold a hammer gun straight out like this with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth and drill into a corner like this. You know, with dirt under their nails, with a forearm like this, with hair, and just like, and then drink beers at lunch. That's what I work with.
Yeah,
but those guys are strong. Some of them really, really strong.
I think there's definitely an argument to be made that type of work not only builds obviously a capacity, but makes you probably very resilient. You know, like we're all in the gym or whatever doing our movements in these one directions all the time with perfect technique and all this stuff. And they're there holding these tools out at like the odd angle on one leg, balancing and stuff. Like, who do you think is going to be more injury prone? Like that guy's bulletproof compared to
pretty much
someone who's only ever stepped foot in the gym, you know? And I think there's just a general underappreciation for the level of fitness, strength, whatever you want to call it, that those individuals have.
That's almost like doing all those instability exercises to build your core with them not even trying. Eating liverwurst sandwiches at lunch and drinking beers. Yeah. Smoking butts. That's what most of the industry was.
How did you manage your own training then? Because the reason why I asked that question is there could be a lot of people that are listening, you know, that have labor jobs and trying to figure out how to manage all that. Which on the other side, there can be people that are listening that do no labor work whatsoever, but then complain and have a hard time being able to do a farmer's walk because they're afraid if they do the farmer's carry, it will screw up their recovery for their next training session. Meanwhile, there's people that do that shit all day long.
Dude, that's why I don't need to do GPP. I did enough GPP my whole life. People are like, oh, wheelbarrows and all that. I'm like, I did enough of that for 20 years. I don't need to cover that anymore. Now, maybe because I'm removed from it, I might have to, but I did it for so long. You know, that's why I'm actually strong in weird, different ways, but I can't lift anything that I used to.
So how did you manage your training?
I actually, honestly, I just knew I had to do it and I did it. So cold, extreme heats, when you're out in the elements like that, you know, it beats you up. So I always took a train in and train back home, right? 45-minute ride. That nap was so important. That like, just say we'd be rushing to catch the 3:05 train. Just say if I got to the platform and it was 3:03 and it was packed, I would wait at that time when I had no kids and I had more time. I would wait for the next train to make sure I got a seat, to shut my eyes for 20 minutes. I had a protein shake and a thing of peanuts back then. That was my fuel. It was like 38 grams of fat. I just liked it, not knowing I was doing like a keto thing. Yeah. You know, I would have that, my whey protein shake, take a nap, get up, and that little bit was my recharge. And then I go train about an hour later and I'd crush it. You know, I had no problem ever doing that. I don't know if I could do that now because I'm like an indoor cat compared to what I was. But yeah, I'd be out in the cold, the hot all day, you know, sweating all day, like drinking gallons of water and not even pissing. You know, you're just sweating and sweating and sweating. And then I would just take that little mini nap on the train.
Was there an initial drop off when you started the work? So like when you first started the construction, you first jumped into that?
You know, honestly, bro, I was so young, not to cut you off. I was so young, you know, you could do anything when you're 20 years old. You don't even get hurt. You don't even need sleep. You train optimal. You know, you notice these things as you get older, and the older you get, it gets harder to recover. You can't work out as often. You got injuries. But yeah, I was like 20. I was 21 years old when I started. I didn't even think of it. I just knew I had to do it. You know, That was it, really.
Do you think being in that type of environment helped as well? Like when you're in a work environment like that, which, you know, as you said, was very demanding and very, you know, you, regardless of how you feel, don't care if you're, you know, you're sick or you're tired or whatever, you need to get this done in time for the next guy to start their bit. It creates a very rigid, you must be on your A game attitude, right? Otherwise you don't get paid or whatever, right? So do you think actually being in that environment helped though? Because that can, I imagine that kind of just bleeds into your character and everything else you do over time.
So a couple of things about that job, what I did, it keeps you very regimented. I ate the same food, the same thing. I'd bring it all, you know, unless you wanted to go out to lunch like some guys do, they drink beers or whatever. But then like you're wasting some time. You got about an hour. Take the Alamac down. You got to go get it. Now there's 15 minutes there. You eat something quick, whatever, come back. Right? I wouldn't do that. I'd bring my food, whatever it was. I'd bring a turkey burger and like some roasted peppers. I'd rather have that 15 minutes, go take a little mini nap at lunch. Even 10 minutes was good enough in the shanty with all my stuff on and then, you know, go back to work. But whatever I brought, I ate. That was it. So it keeps you super strict. There was no snacking. You know, it was just water and the food I ate. And then if I was hungry, I'm like, I can't eat until those peanuts and the whey protein shake. So I was much more disciplined with my diet because of that. I regimented. That's actually the one thing, you know, thinking back now that it did for me.
How did you move from that to training people? And
all right.
So there's more to the question than just that, because with that, you know, if you've been doing this for 20 years, you know, your income is going to be higher than if you've been doing it for 2, and you're in the union as well, right? Which there's good and bad, right? So we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but anyhow, the benefits, right? So you got benefits and then a higher wage, then you're just going to drop all that and go into the training. So how did that work out?
Benefits, you're saying like health benefits, that's what you mean?
Yeah.
My wife's a school teacher.
Okay.
Local too.
Yeah.
Very hard to get a local school teaching job. Otherwise you get a job in the city. You have to know someone. My friend Sammy got my wife into a district, which is close to me. So blessed on that. She's the benefits, right? So as in terms of the hourly pay, right? I'll be honest, I was training my friend. People saw him on Instagram. He started a page. You know, he started putting me on his page. I had a waiting list of some wrestlers. They were paying me. And then like within not very long, I was making pretty much what I was in most of the week going to construction in one day. You know, so if you do not know how unions work, you're in and out a lot, right?
Yeah.
Depending on just the work or whatever. But I was basic for a shop for a while. Work dried up. I was in and out. And then my you know, portfolio of clients started growing and growing. I almost couldn't train them all. So there came a time where I was going in and out, and this is a true story. I remember I was called back. I had to take an OSHA test, and it just didn't feel right going back. I was going back to this. I actually made a U-turn and came back home and never went back.
Now, how long were you doing both?
I was not doing it both that long because the last job I was actually on was a great shop, very professional. I was take off one day a week to train people because I was making more money in that one day than I did in a week doing construction. So when I got laid off, I was genuinely happy. Usually they come up to you with the sad face, brother, I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this. I'm like, no, you did me a favor. They had this bewildered look on their face. Like, no, I'm like, I'm serious.
Yeah,
you did me a favor. That was the last time I went back.
All right. So there wasn't a time where you were where you're working all day and then training.
No, I did. Well, I did. I would work all day and then train 2 people at night.
Okay.
Work all day, train 3 people at night. I was slamming myself. You know, I'd work out a little. Some days I wouldn't work out. I'd come home and just train people. Some days I train people, train one person. You know, it was brutal. And then when I left and I was full tilt with clients, which I'm blessed, then I was training like I have a waiting list for people. I was training like 10 people a day, 14 people, 7, 8. Fridays, I remember I was doing back-to-back 45 minutes. It was a turnstile, 16 people. I was a slave then. Then it almost started to become something I didn't love, a job, which was never supposed to do.
Too much of a good thing, almost.
Yeah, which, you know, I'm blessed in the fact that I must be good at it. They see the passion in how I design programs. But then what I started to do, which I've been doing now for the past year, is online training a lot.
So when you started with the coaching individuals there in person, obviously hit the ground running to a good degree. Where did the knowledge for how to train people, how to program come from? Obviously, if you've been working construction and stuff until that point, is it reading muscle magazines and stuff like that? Where did is it always intuitive?
I've had an obsession with training my whole life. So I have the ability to absorb knowledge with training and the retention. I could read it one time and it sticks. You could show me a relay switch in electrical work. You could show me for that time I remember for the day. I will forget it tomorrow. You could show me 10 times. I will forget it. I don't have a passion for it. I don't love it. It was just a job. With training and PEDs, glue. So, trial and error, experience over time, just training all different types of people. This is how I've learned a custom. I could train anybody. I could train gen pop, old people, high level professional athletes. It's just also you have to love it. You have to love it to be able to do that,
How are you training yourself throughout this whole process? So
that's really
evolved. So go back to not when you first started, but say after you graduated. Was it bodybuilding based, powerlifting based? What?
Yeah. So I started training very hard, bodybuilding based, young, even in high school, right? Then when I got out of high school, I started messing around with some PEDs, did a couple cycles, then didn't do it for a couple of years, but I gained a lot of weight fast. And when I was like 20 years old, I was 230 pounds. I was eating everything, taking Russian sustenance with the paper labels, if you did have them here in Ohio, right? Taking those, eating cheeseburgers. And then I started bouncing. I was like 20, 21. And the guys who I used to bounce with worked at the gym. It was like a hardcore meathead gym, but gym pop in between. And, we'd wait till the gym closed. This was our routine. We'd train together, just us, bring our clothes, we'd go bounce, and we work there. Then we'd go out after. That's a whole other story. But the guys I worked out with were big and strong. Freddie was about 310 pounds, but he used to squat 6 and 7 plates. Justin was my height. He weighed about 265. I was the runt. I was 230. I'm only 5'8". I'm only squatting 405 for like 10. I was
chasing them.
I was chasing them the whole time. Yeah. I was chasing them the whole time. But that's actually what made me strong, was training with these gorillas. It was like Freddie would do everything with he'd do the 150 shoulder presses. Justin would do like 135s. I'm with 110s. Meanwhile, 110s in actuality in a normal gym is heavy for my size. I'm not really a big person at all. I'm like, I'm the weakest. I got to keep up.
But that's the benefit though, right?
Yes.
Because your perception of strong is elevated.
Yeah.
So in your head, it's like, well, if he can do that with 7 plates, there's no reason I can't do it with 6 in any 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a gym pop gym where the guy squatting 405 is the alpha,
you don't see that anymore.
There's a different perspective, right? There's a less motivation.
Absolutely.
And there's also less expectation, perhaps, that, okay, maybe this is my ceiling, because if it was easy to squat more than this, surely other people would be doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I was chasing them to be stronger. But
so to put context on that, how long ago are we speaking?
That was when I was in my early 20s. And then moving forward, to answer the question you asked, how I grabbed,
early 20s would be what?
22?
Yeah.
21, 22. 19, that was 1999 to 2001.
Okay. I'm trying to date.
Yeah, 98 to 2001.
How the PEDs were flowing at that time. I'm trying to date that.
That was just before it was right around the Mexican stuff.
So right when it clamped down?
04 is when the Mexican stuff. So the Mexican
in.
stuff is a lot of the stuff that I was using, but I even started earlier than that. So I remember it was 19. I was 19 years old. I did 15 Russian sustenance, 1 a week, with those Russian D-bowl pop-outs. There was something about those. I don't know if my receptors are way more, but I put like 22 pounds on in 10 weeks.
Fuckers in New York had access to
these things were the sickest fucking things I ever did in my life. I don't know if anything exists like that now.
Probably not.
But then what happened, of course, there came a point I was doing 4 of those a week. That's when I went up to 235, drinking like a gallon of milk and eating fucking 5 cheeseburgers at one time. They worked. My head was like...
Was in the gym environment that you were in, was the PEDs prevalent, or was it
Long Island?
Yeah.
There's a news article years ago. They said if Long Island was something, they said there's so much steroids on it. I'm surprised it doesn't just fall into the water with all the muscle heads. But yeah, there's meatheads everywhere in Long Island.
Did you experience a time after, because it was kind of like U.S. shit, then it was Mexican shit, then there was the war on crime and the Mexican stuff shut down.
Exactly.
Then there was a dry spell. Did you guys experience that dry spell in New York? Fuckers. Everybody else, the rest of the country is like taking cattle implants and shit.
No dry spell in New York. No, never. It's just because, where the demographic of where I am. There's so many people, By the time it gets to Ohio, it's probably fucking cut down and watered down. And It's fake and shit.
But you were in an environment where, that was perfectly normal at 19, probably to be starting. To
so to that, I have an older brother. 7 years older than me, and I remember his friends, you know, they're in their 50s now, and I remember in high school, these guys, they were using steroids in high school, man. I mean, these guys were huge in high school, using the old Anadrol 50 Syntex from the 80s. They would take one a day and put like 30 pounds on in a month. And I remember talking to my brother's friend, he's like, dude, you know these motherfuckers are working when you have nosebleeds and your balls hurt. I'm like, oh, that's good.
Good to know.
Yeah.
But like we associate social media and the prevalence of steroids now with being like a more modern problem in high school. You're like, we've got high school is taking trend, which is true, but it did exist.
Oh, it did when I was in high school.
You know,
I mean, I was in high school in the 80s, and it was there. You know, I remember in the 80s speaking to somebody at the gym I trained with and asking him, like, you know, do you take anything or stuff like that? And he's like, I've only taken one cycle. And I'm like, pause for a minute. And he's like, yes, it started in 78. And it was like 85 at the time. You know, so it was just, that's never went.
It's definitely.
That's a great answer.
I think today kids in high school, I just say in my area, well, that I know of, it was different back then. There was like, I'm talking like my brother's friends were big, like men, like 230 pounds and big. And it's, I mean, but the look was also different. It was like the bigger and heavier, the more jacked you were and more attractive. Now they got this fitness body with the fucking hair. With ripped sweatshirts back then, you know. Do you ever see that Ben Affleck after school special? It was like the first thing he ever did where it was the steroid. You saw it?
I think I know what you're talking about.
To,
I know the demographic you're talking about because every now and again they'd make them, they would make themselves into the gym and you'd be like, the fuck is this? You know, and it's like, you're in the wrong place. You know, and the Zubaz pants and the stringer tank tops and then the sweatshirt that, you know, barely fit the shoulders. And fuck, I was guilty of that for a period, you know, but you know, on the strength side, you got the people training in their jeans and their boots, and they just came from the construction site.
That's actually what I used to.
So they don't even change because what's the point? And it's just more fucking laundry. That's how it was explained to me. Like, I'm already sweating this shit all day long. If I have to change now, I got more laundry to do. You know,
the first gym I actually started to go to, I was 12 years old. My father had to sign a waiver for me to go on. I used to ride my bike there. It was a town over. It was the ultimate gym. It was in a little alley. And you know, it's a hardcore gym when there's no treadmills. No treadmills, there's just weights. And I was, you know, exposed to like, you know, this doesn't exist anymore. I'm talking like giants. And I always remember, man, I'm this little 12-year-old kid. I didn't really know how to lift weights. I used to bench and curl every day. And this one guy, I'm not going to mention anybody, was huge, bro. He looked like the typical poster boy Marine. And he took me under his wing and he showed me how to like split body parts, etc. But I'll always remember there was this one guy named Jesse. I've told the story before. Huge, man. And he had this long gray hair, work boots, jeans. And he would like just on a regular 405 5-plate incline barbell press. This is what went to the gym. There's me. I was the only kid. And they loved it because I was a kid in there with all these guys. You know, but that's when I first started out in the gym like that.
That's kind of how I was as well when I was thrust into it. Is obviously older, you know, way stronger, but then going out of their way to help, you know. But I don't want to leave a false impression of that because you had to show work ethic for those guys to even want to help you at all. Like if you're just in there being a slapdick, nobody's going to pay attention, right? But if you have a certain work ethic, because at a certain point you kind of make your way into that crew, then you'll see other people coming in, and then you're like, you know, it takes a while, you know, to be able to see this is worth that investment to be able to put into that. But it seemed like at least all the places I trained, everybody in there was wanting to help other people, you know, to be able to get stronger with that one caveat.
Got you.
You know, that
maybe that's why they did, because I would go every day. And there's this little kid who ride his bike to the gym. Then after, you know, I can't remember how long it took, but then they were like, oh, come here. You can't bench every day. I was like, why not? I like it. These girls so like it, you know?
Yeah. So I wonder how much of that happens now, you know,
not because
the other thing that's changed with that too is you knew you didn't know anything, right? Where the kids in there now think that they know everything. You know, so if you suggest something, then there's going to be counter. You know,
I don't bother anymore.
Yeah,
no, unless
I used to, unless they ask.
Yeah.
But I won't do it anymore. And you know, I do these spoof videos about like working in sometimes, and why I did them is because this is a real experience I had. I go, you know, everyone, going to a gym, can I work in? He'd be like, yeah, no problem. I went over, I asked him to work in the gym. And I always remember, he looked at me like I asked to borrow his underwear. Like I asked something so obscure and so ridiculous. And he's on his phone for minutes in between the set. But this is everybody around. And I'm like, yo, they should have like a gym etiquette lesson, like something that you could like, download that you have to watch. I'm like, I just was like, how is like, I don't understand. Well,
so what do you think is the driving force behind that changing attitude though? Do you think it's like an entitlement thing? As in like, well, I am on this piece of kit, so therefore it's mine type thing? Or do you think it's just a lack of community within gyms now? And
lack of community maybe? Because everyone has the camera situated on them.
Because they don't need a community when they've got it here. If you know what I mean. Whereas for before social media and stuff, your community was the people in the gym. You didn't have anyone else to learn from. You didn't have any other options. So it's like either you get in with them by earning their respect, which the universal currency is work ethics, the one thing we can probably all appreciate. But now we don't have to earn that because we can just go and search whatever we want and theoretically understand everything.
I don't hate on the camera either, because if it wasn't for the camera, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, if I were to guess, because that's a good question, right? If I were to guess, what I would think is, because there were commercial gyms when I started as well. I didn't go to them, right? Just whatever. That's where the aerobics classes and shit were at. So, but if you found that hardcore black iron or whatever people want to call that gym, there wasn't a lot. There might have been one, in each city, maybe. Sometimes you had to travel to a different city to be able to find those. And then over the years, with CrossFit may have been a part of this, kind of around that time frame. It blew up, those type of training environments through CrossFit, through training centers, athletic type training centers, personal training centers, all that blows up really fast, right? So culture is a weird thing, because if there's only one or two places, that culture is going to be able to cultivate. And there's not a whole lot of people coming in, except for like January, but there's not a lot of people coming in. So now you take that number of people times 1,000. Then you take the locations times 100, then people are coming in at a much greater rate. And there's not an established culture that's going to be in there. They're just dumping people in there that really don't have gym ethics because they don't know what gym ethics are. How would they? They've never been to a gym before. It's not like they went to these other places and they have some big fucker saying, hey man, don't take 3 plates off one side and leave the other,
That's almost common sense.
You see, a lot of that common sense crap though was, bashing gym talk, crap like that. Or, like, what are you doing, benching every day? That's easy in a controlled, smaller environment. Take it times 1,000. And there's no rules outside of put your plates away. And I think a lot of that comes a lot of what I would call intangibles that come with training, because you can have the perfect program and work great, or a perfect program that works like shit, but there's a lot of other variables that go into making something work really great that you don't see on Instagram, and it's part of that whole culture. If you got a group of people in a gym, even if they train separately, but they all want to see everybody succeed, that's way different than if you have the same number of people in a gym that nobody gives a shit, about anybody else, and that's culture. So that's my guess.
It just was watered down at such a fast rate that there's only so many gems of knowledge, individuals who have the knowledge to share, right? So if they are now 1 to 1,000 as opposed to 1 to 10, or whatever the ratio might be now, you just don't get that.
Not every kid's like that though. There's some kids like, you want to work in, but I'd say 1 out of every 7 to 10 know the right thing to do, and I'm like surprised. Where back in the day was the norm. If they see me hovering around, they're like, "Oh," I go, "You want to work in?" No one does that. Once in a while, someone will do that. You have to go out of your way, and then they're not always looking at you like that. They're like, "All right," but more often than not, you get that crooked look, and you're like, whatever, dude, I'll just do something else.
But then it's the same also if you offer a lot of the time. Like if you're on something and someone is hovering around you, if you offer, they'll usually say no.
I've never had that.
Oh, have you not? Okay,
No.
well, maybe it's just, maybe this is a me problem. In the commercial gyms that we've been at and things like that, people won't want to work in, because I have no idea why. Because it's like almost, even when it's to their benefit as opposed to their supposed detriment, it still seems to be this, oh, I don't want to do that. I would rather go and do something else.
Maybe they're insecure about whatever they're doing.
Well, that happens sometimes, admittedly, where it's like, oh, you've got whatever plates in there. It's like, well, plates go off and on.
Doesn't matter.
They don't just go up forever.
No, but shit happens with selectorized machines too. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I can almost understand if you got 6 plates per side on a leg press or some shit and somebody wants to jump. Kinda.
That's like, I'd be like, dude.
Like, whatever. But it's a fucking selectorized seated chest press. Like, stand the fuck up, right? It's going to take me 15 seconds to do the set. Like, no, man, I'm using this. Like, come on. Like, what is this? A territorial stupid thing?
And I'll even be curious. I see somebody trying to superset, which is almost impossible in a commercial gym. I'll leave it alone. I'll just do something else because I know he's trying to work. You know what I mean? But like, people they're like, not used to that. Gyms today. It's the kids, really. You get the older guys around our age, they know the right thing to do.
So when you started training people, and it was wrestlers and fighters first, right?
Yeah.
When that started to branch out demographically, how did you go about expanding your education on working with different subsets? Really
like reading, trying stuff myself, and then I started playing around with bands. I never played around with bands before. I'm like, wow. I'm reading Louis Simpson, watching him, and I'm like, holy cow, these can make you stronger in all different ways. Then I started playing around with all different ways for myself for hypertrophy. Then you look at social media and you see these other guys doing crazy movements with bands. And I just create stuff myself and try to be a little different. That's, I could apply, which works. It's not hocus pocus bullshit. Really, at the end of the day, I don't really have a lot of Gen Pop people, meaning someone who's just trying to get in shape. Most of the clients that I had, which I want, are guys who train, who want to go take it to another level, which is fun to me.
Sure.
Even though it might be, people think that's more work, it's not for me. It's more work for someone who doesn't know how to train. It's a nightmare, bro. I'm like, oh my God, bro. Like, this is not what I want to do. It's like watching fucking paint dry. I like being able to take the guys. Actually, I took a lot of guys who actually fought, who came to me for strength training. They turned into like powerlifting bodybuilders because they love lifting so much. They never really did it. And I got them strong and I got them big and they became obsessed with it. But those guys can literally throw against the wall and peel them off and throw them against it again. It's fun. And then when like I do something, I see they get nervous. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing. They're like, fuck, bro. Like, it's like a finisher, it's like an accessory to squats. I would do leg extensions. And just for more hypertrophy work, I'd like 2 triple drop sets and double drop sets and isometric holds, and they would get genuinely nervous beforehand because that's how bad I torture them. Those guys are fun. The train is what I mean,
And for you, like in that scenario, a big part of it, I would like to think the difference is like with the Gen Pop, they're a lot of the time they're there because they feel they should be. Whereas those guys that you're talking about, your demographic that you enjoy, they're there because they want to be. And they're driven. And if you say jump, they're going to say how high. Whereas with the Gen Pop, not to paint everyone with the same brush, but a lot of the time you're pushing them up a hill. And the second you stop motivating them, positively reinforcing them, they're going to start rolling back down. Whereas you're spending a lot of your time and energy doing that as opposed to instilling better training methods, technique, whatever else upon them. So with those guys, you don't have to worry about that side of it. So, I mean, if anything, you probably have to hold them back sometimes if they're...
So I do like pushing people, I do like to motivate people. To show them this in which they catch the rails and go, I like it. And I keep motivating them in that sense. But in the in-person personal training, right? Like when I started, when I had an abundance of guys who want to train, and then there'd be a gap in my day. And then like there's a couple of people in the evening. Like I'm not the trainer in person to drag you out of your house, bro. I'm not doing that. If you want to train, you call me. Then I'll be here for you. I'm not going to chase you. You know what I mean? You have to want to do it. Now, for my online coaching, I genuinely like motivating these guys to do it for something that they never did. I inspire them. I teach them a new way to eat, a new way to train. That I get enjoyment out of. But for me in person, like to fuck up my day, no, you're not doing that. If you want to train, you call me. Then I'll be here for you. I'm not calling you to chase you out and then listen to your fucking excuse. You got stuck in traffic and then they lie later and I catch them lying. I'm like, yo, you don't remember you told me that? You're an idiot. You must think I'm dumb. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that kind of trainer in person.
How would you define your training philosophy overall?
More people that I train, they want to just look good with some strength. You know, you came from a different world where strength was everything, but you have to be strong, and lifting heavy weights is very important for longevity, no matter what it is. You know what I'm saying? Lifting weights light, like one, I don't enjoy that. Guys don't enjoy it too much. I like to lift heavy weights, but there is a base to it, meaning like the importance of it. It's actually one of the most anti-aging things you could do, is have a strong physical body, and muscle mass is the most anti-aging.
I think there's, you mentioned that you were on a podcast with Michael Hearn. I'm not sure if this was on your profile and you reposted it or something. It may have been from there, but he made a good quote where basically he said, there's no such thing as light weights. There's just heavy weights for the rep range that you're using, you know. And I think there is a misconception there, because like in a way, like let's think of marathon running. You know, you think marathon running is like slow endurance pace, right? Have you ever stood and watched a marathon runner run past you at like world-class level?
They're sprinting.
They're sprinting for 26 miles. And it's the same thing with hypertrophy. Like, yes, the distance, the rep range is longer, but it doesn't mean it's light or easy. It just means that what constitutes heavy is a little bit less. That's what you're failing at. Yeah. But like, it never gets light in the same way that training never gets easy. You just adapt.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's just a bit of a misconception where it's like, oh, I don't want to train heavy, but I want to put on muscle. It's like, well, tough.
It's relatively heavy for the individual. Yeah. So just argument, let's use this. Just say a 125 pound bench press for someone X amount of pounds is pushing at 95% at, you know, effort and landing in the 8 to 12 rep range. That's heavy for them. Yeah. Where you could do it with 2 fingers, and you know.
Well, I mean, being on the backside of this bell curve, what used to be light for me before, it's fucking heavy now, right? So but the effort's close to the same, which sucks even more, you know. But anyhow,
I know, I feel the same way. I get hurt a lot.
It's like this. I'll stop there.
No, it bothers me too. It bothers me because the one thing I miss most about being able to do that, one, I was never as nearly as strong as you, but relative, right? 405 is what I worked out with everything. So in actuality, that's kind of heavy, but nothing like you know. But I miss being under a bar and being a little afraid. I miss how hard I used to push, like that 100% effort and not thinking about anything and almost passing out. Because I know if I go to that level, I'm going to get hurt. I always peel back from that, you know. But you just have to.
That's all the more reason, and I'm sure you probably talk about this with your clients and stuff like that. Like, we do take the ability to train hard for granted whilst we can do it. Or at least the vast majority do, right? Like, even all of us who love it still probably take it for granted in the moment. Like you're saying, like the ability to get under a bar, switch off, you know, go into the zone or whatever you might say, and be able to just strain. Nothing but strain, pure what am I made of type moment. Like, you don't get that for long. And you have to build up to it and earn it for a start. And then you don't get it for very long before you have to start worrying about it. So like, enjoy it and appreciate it, you know, and that you owe it to yourself.
So the strain, I still chase that.
Oh, I do.
I chase it. So I chase it differently. I used to chase it with how much weight I pushed and how hard I pushed. So now I chase it with how a tempo goes with a rep range, with a moderate to moderately heavy. And like, I'm still paying attention to how the fibers feel in my chest or something. I don't fucking feel a pop or something. But like, I'll almost to do that. I did it yesterday a little bit, just like a slow eccentric and a slow concentric. And then pushed 5 more reps, like torturing myself. But that's fun. That last 5 where you're like, I'm going to pee myself. You know, I love, that's the part I really enjoy. No.
So when did Instagram pop off? So what's the story behind that?
This is the story behind that. So my friend who I was training UFC, he had an Instagram. I had a page from my friend who's made me one. And I had like 3,000 followers, 5,000. It was cool. You know, I'd go to his events when he's UFC. Guys would be like, oh, Vinny Uzi, right? And then I knew I had a lot of information, but I didn't know how to get it out there. I'm not a social media guy. You guys know that's a whole fucking science behind it. You can't do both. So I actually got a kid who's awesome at it. And I went through a couple of other people, whatever, which I wasn't impressed with their work. And we were filming one day in my gym, and I was just talking like this. I go, yo, you filming? He goes, yeah, I was filming this whole time. He edited it. He knew what to do, put it up. I gained 100,000 followers in 5 days.
What was the video? Or what were they?
It was a honey one, and I started about honey and glycemic index. It must be my crazy Long Island accent and the black glasses. I don't know what it was.
So there was nothing like particularly special about that video. No,
I don't know. No.
Yeah.
And then it might have been 2 of them. And I remember I was at a wedding. I went, yo, check this out. I went from 5 to like 9 in a day. Then my phone was, I had to turn it off, the alerts. It was hot, but the phone was burning up. I went, holy shit, I'm at 22. I woke up, I was at like 33. I gained like 9,000 a day or something like that for like 10 days. And I slowed down at like 102. And then I started chewing away. I went up to 120. Went up and up and up.
That kid earned a bonus right there. Fair play
Yeah.
to him.
So I'm like, yeah, we're working together for a while. You're hired. You know?
So how do you choose the topics now?
So pretty much, it's just a rotation of what we do. So, we try some and we bases a lot off the views, not so much the followers. If obviously, followers is like a watch. People could buy that shit. But, there's a direct percentage and a mathematical equation between views and followers. And now I've learned this. I'm like he goes, you're one of the only few people, and there's a few people that don't buy their followers. If you look at my views to follow ratio, I got a lot of views, and I have a lot of viral ones with like 12 million, 10 million. I'm like, that's good. He goes, dude, that's ridiculous. That means 10 million people seen you before and, liked it. But really, like, we try something, pop it off. I suggest something, boom, get 580,000 views. All right, let's work. And then we rotate that. Static posts. I do the comedy ones now. I do this, kind of like a Joey Swole thing, but I'm real about it. And then rotate this. Yeah. So it's just like a rotation math thing that we do. But he knows a lot, the guy I'm almost like just the guy who's just the product. He thinks of a lot of things.
So what are the topics that pop the most?
I would say it depends, man. Some things I do just go viral. Like when I start doing the ones with trend, and I have, if you'll look at my page, the guy with the long hair. We do the podcast together. He's smart. You ever come across someone who's like, you're like, wow, that guy's smart? He's one of those guys. He's so smart where I'm like, I don't even like understand, like, not with that, but like just in life. Yeah. He knows about politics, war, history. You got to hear him. But whenever we do a trend one or something with PDs and him and I talk, boom, 500, 900,000, 380,000. And then get 50, 50, 50, do a training one. Then all of a sudden I'll talk about, I don't know. It just happens. I can't really pinpoint it. Then I'll get 900,000, 12 million.
So with the trend, is this a positive or negative?
When I speak about it, negative most of the time. Negative. I mean, yeah, it's remarkable what it does to your body, what you look like, but I can't see, there's no benefit to it to take it. If you're a recreational user and you're not making a substantial amount of money, then I don't see any point in doing it because there's more negatives. Like forget about physical, mental negatives and the way you feel. You don't even feel healthy. And I didn't even do a lot. And I look like the abomination, dude. I remember I did a cycle of trend. I was like, holy, how my body changed. I was bigger and harder, fast. I was probably just getting real trend, like the pellets. Fucking, it was really dark the trend I got. I was like fucking mud. Who knows what that did to me.
But it is, I mean, I would say in powerlifting or strength sports, it's probably the most abused.
Trend.
Yeah, because they'll look at bodybuilder dosages. And bodybuilders are taking it for a specific purpose, right? They want to be hard, rock hard, and that's what trend does. And it leans you out, gets rid of that subcutaneous water, which you need high dosages for, unfortunately. But like to get the strength benefits, like the neurological benefits of it, you don't need quarter of that. But they'll just look at those bodybuilding dosages and be like, oh,
dude, bodybuilding dosages.
I must need 600 milligrams a week. And I'm like, good luck surviving 600. Your prep.
I did 200 milligrams of trend because I couldn't afford more than that. I'll spread it out one, and it did more than what I wanted. I wouldn't even think about taking more than that. That's why the dosages you guys take, I'm like, yo, could your body even absorb half of that? 3,000 mgs a test. I mean, yeah, I took 1,000 mgs for a while when I was big, but I only really just took tests and I could afford a little the Ganabol EQ, the big fucking jug. And I don't even remember how I was shooting, like 200 milligrams, whatever. I was a kid. The sustenance was my base, the test. But like, then even with when I did trend, I did like 500 tests, 2 cc's of trend, few IUs of growth hormone, and I grew like crazy. That's why I'm like, I tell these guys, I'm like, oh, you don't need that much drugs to grow muscle. It's like train and like with anything, bro. I ate a lot of food. The food is what's, that drugs and the training's the catalyst. If you don't eat, bro, that shit's not going to go anywhere. So I remember how important it was. I literally ate like every 2 hours. Like when you have nothing else, like that was my most important thing. I got to eat whatever it was, but I wouldn't always eat clean. I'd eat like fucking cheeseburgers, then have a shake with cheeseburgers, roast beef sandwiches, calories. And I just got bigger and harder doing that.
I mean, there are obvious exceptions, right? But in your experience, do you find then the ones that are maybe spouting off and using the higher dosages are generally trying to compensate for lacking in other areas then, as in maybe they're not doing that stuff and just trying to use it to force results that maybe they haven't earned?
I think they're training hard, and just the influence of social media and reading so much of whatever, platform, like 600 trend, 400 trend, 1500 tests. I think that's what they influence a lot of what the dosages are, to be honest.
So then we go down the rabbit hole, which is something I wanted to ask you, like with your profile, going through it, a lot of and I mean this in no derogatory way at all, a lot of the information you put out there is very clear and simple. It's not hidden behind complex words, scientific terminology, not trying to confuse people, not trying to make anything superficial or sensationalize anything. So how do we go about people like yourself? How do you fight the misinformation then that is out there? Because you're, what I would say, is trying to do the good side of it.
Yeah.
Like, listen, 99% of this battle is the stuff that you do day in, day out that's really not interesting at all. And then you've got the others who are making the quick buck saying, you need to sun your balls, you need to drink, you need to eat 158 blueberries every day. Do you know what I mean? And all this stuff. So how do we go about fighting that?
Experience, right? So I've done everything. All right, even in life, training wise, I've tried high dosage drugs. I've even tried, to be honest, I did 2,500 to 3,000 mg per week for about 3 weeks. My body did not agree with it. Like I was getting weird rashes. I didn't feel healthy. I was like, yo, fuck this. I'm not doing it. It's really experience. So like I always use this analogy and think about it, right? So let's just take, you're building a house. And you get a kid who came out of school, he knows how to write every blueprint, knows the schematics of every tool, but's never touched a fucking chop box or a nail gun. Or the guy's been building houses for 40 years, but he can't read or write. Who would you want to build your house?
I know.
It's the experience.
Yes.
I've done dosages. I've done different types of tests. I've done propionate, suspension, Winstrol. I've tried not even like exorbitant amounts, but I know what these drugs feel like. That's why when I hear people say, I'm like, it doesn't work like that. What are you talking about? This isn't as metabolic. I'm like, you don't need that much, or it does work. You're just not eating the food. Do you know what I mean? That's why. Do you kind of agree with me on certain things with that?
Yeah, one of the things that's always been intriguing to me is with the whole trend thing is, well, like, why trend? Like test is the base for pretty much everybody and always has been, right? And if I go back far enough, I would never, trend essentially was parabolan, right? So trend in my world didn't even exist until I was pretty much done competing. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And then I look it up and it's like, oh, parabolan, that's that
Hex.
shit. That's that shit that was 76 milligrams per ampule for $27. Meanwhile, I could buy the shit that Sustanon, which was $250 per ampule for 15. I'm buying the fucking Sustanon. I can get more milligrams per, and that was my mindset back through then, where you would think test would be the one, but is it not, because TRTs become such a huge talking point for everybody that it's mainstream? So has that become, that doesn't work? To the person that wants to get big and strong, like, fuck test. I don't want to take that. That's what all the old fuckers do that have low testosterone. I want to get jacked and strong. I need something better than the test. So boom, is that where, I don't understand how trend, out of all compounds, the one that was the hardest to fucking get for a long period of time, and if you did, it was fucking a cattle implant, that you had to.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, fuck that. I don't want that one. Give me the one with the propionate in it. It's Hefroid or.
Why I think, like we said, is because one, the guys who have done it, it is very powerful compound, and you could feel the disparity, the androgenicity, what it does to you. You could get pumped and like. You could fucking pick up a water bottle, get pumped. You see your body dramatically change without really trying. And maybe to what you said, do kids and younger guys, it's further in between where someone could they train that hard. Because I see it in the gym. Do they train that hard? I knew the guys I trained, we trained, like, dude, I remember every leg workout, I would be crippled. I'd be laying under the water fountain at Gold's Gym. I couldn't walk because I would, and I would just do so much volume because that's all I did. Drop set, squat heavy weight. I would puke very often after leg day. Do I see anybody puke anymore or even close? No. Meanwhile, it was like almost a weekly thing for me, or a few times a month I'd vomit after a leg day. No one trains like that. I'm not saying I'm like such a fucking Superman training, but like I don't think anyone trains to that parameter.
Do you think
anymore.
though we've been over, excuse the terminology, but do you think we've been like kind of pussified a little bit by exercise science in that regard?
Yeah, I do.
Because they're going to say, and it might be true, maybe, let's say I love the science, I love the research, but there's always context to everything. I think more and more as we find out more, we're maybe using it perhaps as an excuse to be like, oh yeah, but optimal rep ranges or sets per week is this. You don't need to do triple drop sets and be puking by the water fountain. It's like, well, maybe I don't, but what if it teaches me how to work harder? And what if it does? What if it instills a work ethic in me? Or what if I just enjoy it? Or all these other intangibles that, or maybe it does get me about 1% more that you're not willing to work for.
So this is what I figured out. I think when you first start out, like all of us did, I just think if you lift weights and eat a lot of food and live very hard till you can't lift weights anymore, you're going to get bigger and stronger the harder you push. Then there's going to come a certain point where your body hits homeostasis and levels out. That's where the science is important. How do I change up my training? Change up the volume, change up the techniques. Maybe I should train less. Maybe I should train more often. That's where that starts to come into play. Where your knowledge could be, broadened and from learning and applying science. Because if you're a knucklehead and Neanderthal, you keep lifting heavy weights like that and you're not knowledgeable and you keep consistently doing the same thing, you're going to hit a ceiling and you're not going to gain anymore. Everybody does. This is as the older you get, the more knowledge, the more you read and apply. And this is where the science is important to know. Both go hand in hand.
Yes.
You have to train hard, but the science, I think, like Phil, what you're saying, I think there's a little bit too much science, which is taking over to training just balls out, to be honest. Yeah,
because like you can't out science hard work. Like we can discuss periodization schemes, maximally effective reps, optimal exercise selection, but there's going to be, the threshold to actually stimulating the gains you want is pretty high. Like how hard you have to work, right? Like how close to failure for whatever. And like if you're 2% below that minimum threshold, well, 100 sets times 0 effectiveness is 0. So like maybe people are spending too much time worrying about all that stuff and they just need to be 2 or 3% harder and working 2-3% harder in the gym to get above that threshold. And then all of a sudden, maybe the minutia doesn't matter quite so much.
So this to the training science, right? What made me think this, the different types of training. So I was trained like, powerlifting, bodybuilder, lift heavy, 4 sets of 4, whatever. Then when I started fighting, I didn't really know about the sport-specific type of training. And then one of the strength trainers at the gym I went to, because the gym I went to had some serious guys, I said, yo, could you put together a program for me? So when he put this together a program for me, I'm like, what is this? I'm like, I don't have a pump. I'm doing, 30% for speed, 4 or 5 reps, 4 sets timed. It's the best I ever performed. That's why I'm like, wow, this shit works. That's where I dove into more knowledge with that, But at first I'm like, yo, this is good. What is this, bro? I'm not going to failure. I don't feel any pump, but it's all for sports specific, for explosiveness and speed. Then when I performed, like I said, the best I ever did, that's what, I'm going to learn that too.
How much do you think your base before that played into that outcome?
A lot, because I had such a solid base from lifting weights and a base strength from power bodybuilding for so many years. I just learned a new different rail to learn,
I'd say probably even the construction work probably worked in, like your GPP walking into that was probably better, right, than the average guy walking into an MMA gym for the first time or whatever, right?
I remember shit like at work, right? Something like, okay, the crane couldn't get the pipe up to the deck or whatever. We got to carry it up and break up the bundle. I'm like, oh. So I take a fucking length of 10 foot 3/4. It's awkward heavy. Put it on my shoulder and have to walk up 3 flights of stairs and put it down. Do that for 4 hours. But my body's used to that where it would probably whack somebody if they did that the whole day. I'm like, all right, whatever. Then go on to my next job after that. That was my GPP.
Sure.
That would happen actually more often than not.
That when you're talking like, you're pinned on the floor on one hip with the guy on your shoulder like that, you're like, okay, I'm used to carrying shit at awkward angles, and you know what I mean, like how to use your body and manipulate leverages and all that type of thing.
It's weird. Like whenever I can't lift anything, I think I'm weak, right? And then when I roll around with somebody, like, dude, you're fucking strong. I'm like, this guy's fucking pulling my dick. I don't think I'm that strong anymore. But I have weird like strength still in my body from probably doing all that. So my stomach, I never had a streamlined small stomach. I've always had, even when I was ripped, I had a blocky, thick stomach because the way I lift. And actually, I used to be like, oh, my stomach's fucking big, but I like it because it's that base strength from deadlifting and squatting. I was never a good presser. I was more of a squatting, deadlift guy.
Well, what I wonder with the exercise science and being as popular it is now, if you're dealing with that sport specificity and that's how somebody starts, right? Then that base may not be there, right? So then I wonder how effective, all that sport specificity really is if there's not a base and there's not some kind of periodized or phasic structure to have phases.
So when you build that, there's different phases to get someone for a fight. Yeah. So you prep them, you build base strength, then you go into like a speed explosive phase, and then you go into almost like the pre-fight, like it's a mix of everything, like more endurance, maintain the strength, and then work on speed and just other factors. But there's 3 usually phases. One's you build almost like an off season. Powerlifting, bodybuilding, not really any hypertrophy work, maybe certain things.
Well, I think you see, that's what I think gets left out, so if you're following the specificity type people, that's all they're going to talk about because it's the shiny fucking thing. Yeah. Right. And if that's all somebody did, it's really just one, it'd be no different than the person that just does a pure strength phase for 4 years straight. Yeah. Where if that's all they do, there's going to be a point, obviously it's going to go up, right? Because they're not doing anything. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns because eventually everything's still going to be based upon absolute strength specific to the sport that's there. And I'm being very, very specific in my words here because when you say everything's based upon absolute strength, the old meathead in me would think that everybody needs to squat 800 pounds, but if they're a fighter, they don't need to squat 800 pounds. But I've always kind of seen that dilemma as being a stupid talking point because all you would have to do is to look at a cross section of the top fighters. On average, what do they squat? Right. And you figure that out. That's probably where I need to be. Yeah. Then right through there, where if the average is, I don't know, 405 or some shit like that, then the 600 probably isn't going to help you a whole hell of a lot. It doesn't help. It's going to come at the expense of something else, which is going to make you a shittier fighter. Sure.
I think some of the problems with that specificity training comes from, there's like a lot of these S&C facilities where they're like, we'll take your kid and increase their 40-yard dash time guaranteed in 6 weeks or whatever. It's because they'll take them, or these athletes, it doesn't have to be kids, it could be anyone, and they'll take them from coaches that have been doing the year-long plan or whatever it might be, and they'll just go, right, 6 weeks of depth jumps, loaded sled sprints, sprinting drills, hurdles, power work, and lo and behold, their power development goes up and they beat their 40-yard dash time or whatever. And it's like, great. So you're taking the kid, the athlete, whatever, and peaking them on the back of probably 12 months of someone else's work, and then using that as like the proof that your system works. But then what do you do for the next? And then they just run that for 6 weeks again, and the returns just go and go and go. So I imagine sometimes that's probably a hard sell to the fighters that you're training, because when you maybe after their fights are done and you need to go back to the right hypertrophy work, strengthening their tendons, working on their movement quality, they probably see all the flashy shit all the time.
So what you got to think, like, what's the risk to reward with the fighter, right? What are we getting stronger for? It's the sport. What's the movement for? It's all to get better and stronger for the sport, really, right? So really, like with weight, you want to make sure, obviously, nothing's to failure, because that's more bodybuilding, but it's for strength and, hit those 3 reps and 4 reps and explosive. But like, with certain movements and certain depths and rep ranges, and why would you have to go that far down? You don't have to. You're ever going to pick someone up off the floor in that position? I like single leg things a lot for fighters, because you're always in awkward positions, single leg lunges and certain explosive box jumps. It always has to correlate to the sport and make sense for it, and that's why I design my own shit. Because that's why, like, I did it, so I kind of like know what to do with certain guys. For other things, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense, and I wouldn't really do that. But everybody has their own thing, design it their own way.
No, but sure. But if you're only strong bilaterally, like just
straight up
squatting with straight, even stance when are you ever going to be in that position in a fight? It's never going to happen, right? You need to be awkward strong.
So like, honestly, I really, for fighters, I rarely straight bar back squat. I'll do like split lunges, Bulgarian lunges, trap bar squats, Zercher squats, Zercher good mornings.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I'll put someone on the back is maybe a good morning off a pin,
Mm-hmm.
with bands, stuff like that. But really like a back barbell squat once in a while off of a high box. Nothing really even to maybe parallel would be the lowest. But nothing like, oh yeah, we got to sit ass to the grass, and there would be no point to that.
Sure.
Because I saw someone do that who's strength. I'm like, yeah, you're only squatting ass to grass, and the guy's a sports speed trainer. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense. You're going to a depth where you could risk injury. For what reason?
Sure. And that's the beauty of it in a way, though, is that when you're working with non-strength athletes, there is no lift you have to do. There are patterns that you could probably argue they have to do, but there is no specific exercise like, oh, okay, so Zercher beats you up, well, let's try something else. But the beauty for you is that you have almost carte blanche with whatever you see to be appropriate. It doesn't have to carry over to anything other than the fact, are you stronger in the octagon?
Yeah.
Which, again, I think in sports performance, certain exercises get put up on a pedestal when they really shouldn't or don't. Like, why does everyone have to deadlift from the floor if they never deal with those kind of joint angles?
I rack pull.
There you go. Like, is there like, for example, let's take a 7-foot basketball player with a 7'2" wingspan. Why should he do bench press or deadlift from the floor? What's his range of motion? What's the stability demands? What's the shear stresses on the back? It's like the best exercise is the one that doesn't beat them up and gets them strong in the areas they need to get strong, right?
You also got to think this, unless you're like a jiu-jitsu, if you're only a jiu-jitsu guy, jiu-jitsu athlete, like really, like theoretically, a bench press doesn't correlate to MMA or boxing in any which way. I would never really ever I don't make them bench press. I make them do single arm landmine presses, maybe single arm dumbbell presses. The risk of injury is just too high. It's not as important. It's not going to increase punch velocity or strength, but I make them do awkward shit like landmine trunk twist, like pick them up off the floor and then transfer that way for core strength. But like if you think about it, why, unless you close grip bench press for speed with the, one of those gridiron bars, close for 3 reps with like 50% or 40% of your 1 rep max, so you're not fucking tearing something, that would make sense. A couple of things go through my mind with that is I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. But in a real world, everybody's got a gym, their garage or something like that. So what is the compliance to that? Because what I can see is the bench press has been a topic of controversy for sport training for fucking ever. And the conclusion I kind of came to is, well, you may as well put it in there, because if you don't, they're going to do it in their friend's basement and they're going to max out and probably get fucking hurt doing that. And this is before the deadlift. I'd say the deadlift may even be more popular than the bench press today, where it's flipped over to where I can totally see that. It's they come in and you have them do rack pulls and stuff like that. Then they're complaining about their back being fucked up, and you find out that they just pulled a single in their friend's garage, over the weekend. So do you deal with that? I'll be honest, not really too much. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really train people sports wise really anymore.
Okay.
I don't. I kind of veered away a lot from that. Most of my business now, 95% of it, honestly, is online training for guys in their 40s, 30s, 40s, who just want to get back in shape and build. And through my program, it must be my demographic and my draw on social media, I don't really have too many normal gem pop. There are guys who just want to like level up their game, which is great because that's what I want. But I could cater to anybody. I do have guys who need motivation. That's the smallest percentage. But I got dudes, I go, bro, your before picture is better than most trainers, after pictures. Those are kind of the guys I have that like where I have to really implement some crazy stuff with dieting and like carb depletion, timing of carbs at certain times, and what types of carbs to eat. That's fun to me though.
So what is the roadblock that they run into that creates the catalyst for them to reach out to you?
Because they're stuck and they're just like, I can't get rid of this fat. But listen, the majority of the guys, okay, so on the smallest end, I got gem pop guys who just like want to get back in shape. Then another small end on the top end are those guys who are just going to the next. I got the guys in the middle of the road who are D1 football players, businesses, families, kids, got out of shape, only know the D1 gym room. And they introduced them to something totally different. The program they're designed where you optimize body fat loss, sculpt your body, utilizing bodybuilding movements, not fucking burpees and running on a treadmill. Nobody loves that. These guys want to lift with their meatheads. So I designed programs that are for meatheads to burn body fat. So really like the hypertrophy and looking good and being strong as well, that's my lane. Okay. More than the sports. You know, that's really where my passion's at.
So to dial it back, then the catalyst is they don't like the way they look, or they just feel like shit.
They can't get over a hump.
Okay, so they're trying. They're
at that like last 10% or 15. Like, man, I don't know what to do here. I'm stuck. And, you know, I'm like, you know, I just know all this shit about dieting, how to fucking manipulate fucking food in certain ways and depletion and how to train to optimize the fat loss. Then I introduce this to them. They're like,
in general, what are they doing that put them in that position? Because
they're doing
the
same
training.
thing. They're doing the same thing, the same diet, the deficit, you know, then cheating on the weekend too much and then deficit again, maybe too much of a deficit, too far of meals in between, thinking they're doing themselves justice by starving. You know, same training routine, same bro split, no implementation of any kinds of progression. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's just a stagnation of the program and the process.
Food and training.
And they don't have the knowledge. Well, they say they don't even know that it needs to change. To create momentum to spark.
Yeah, that's why they come to me. This is my lane. I go, you know, you're a finance guy, and you know how to build houses, and I know training.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they just fell into a habit of what they've been doing for so long that
they also don't want to read the books. They don't have the desire to.
Yeah.
You know, even though they love to train, a lot of guys do it for mental. They want to look good on vacation with their families, etc. You know, they're not going to fucking open up a book and read it. They're going to phase out after fucking 2 pages where you and I, all three of us, will dive into it and absorb it. This is why they come to me, or guys like us, to help them and change.
So what are the most common bad habits that you have to battle against then with these individuals? So like we're talking Gen Pop, you know, what do you really have to try and get out of them or disingrain out of their behavior to actually allow them to make progress sustainably?
So really like changing up the food, like manipulating the volume of calories. Sometimes they starve themselves too much.
Okay, so like we're talking like they're going through cycles where they overindulge and then undereat and
undereat, think that I'm doing overindulge, drink too much on the weekends, do it for too many days in a row, then starve themselves out for too long, which is no good. Then slow their metabolism down. You know, so that's where I step in. I start to change it. Or I even really what it is I like to eat. And my thing is I've designed the way to eat where you enjoy your food. At the end of the day, you got to enjoy your food. I was telling them, you don't have to eat fucking tilapia and broccoli out of a bag to get in shape. No one's looking to step on stage next to Chris Bumstead. You just want to be fucking wearing a bathing suit with your family in the Bahamas, right? Right. That's what the goal is here. And I could get him there. You know how I learned? I listened to fucking Sal D up the block from me. Literal true story. Fucking fish and broccoli. That's how you get shredded. So I'm fucking sitting at work on a spackle bucket eating fish and broccoli out of a bag with fucking concrete and dirt. And I'm like, oh, I want to slit my wrist right now. I did it for months. Then I'm like, yo, fuck this one. I just got into
Did it work?
It worked.
Because you know, that's an important question. If you
was it fun fucking shaving the cold jelly off and eating it? And that was the one thing I ate that day. That's talking about building grit, and then go back to fucking slinging wire. That sucked.
Do you think that's a problem though, where there's still a presumption that is what's required to get the type of look that average person is looking for?
You don't have to do that to get the average to look good with your.
But do you think that's a misconception? What
Maybe
people have, like, oh well, you know, I just don't want to do I don't want to do the fish and broccoli. You know, I want a 6-pack, but I don't want to have to do that. Well, you know, do you think there's the misconception that is what they have to do?
If you want to step on stage at the fucking Classic Olympia, that's what you have to do. But if you just want to fucking lose some pounds and be pretty ripped and have a 6-pack, you do not have to do that at all. So I've figured out ways in all different types of varieties of foods where you like what you eat and you stay the course. Like for me, like, dude, you're 47 years old. How are you in shape all the time? I'm like, because I don't fucking hate what I eat, because I eat pretty much like a robot. The same thing, but I broaden the spectrum of variety for them so they could stay the course and be consistent with the diet. Because at the end of the day, what's a diet? It's a fucking fad, in and out, and there's tons of bullshit on social media. You see it all the time. Makes me sick the more I'm involved in it. And I know their shit. I'm like, I'm on to you. You fucking manipulating people's minds just to monetize you. Shame on you. I could call some people out, but I won't.
Well, what are some examples of that?
You want me to tell you?
Yeah, well, yeah. All of course I want you to tell me.
So my wife is doing something now, right? You pick your battles with your wife. Smart people do.
Yeah,
Smart
I
men
get
do.
it. No, I get it.
Yeah, you got it. My wife has stuff
We all
metabolism. She's not fat, but she has stuff metabolism. So she's doing this one diet. She's following this chick on Instagram. I don't know if you want me to name her out or call her out or not. I think I might message her myself. And she's fucking got everyone swallowing the bullet. The primal bullshit, your vagina aligning with the moon, ladies, this and that, right? It's all diet, right? First week, don't eat past 6 o'clock, right? One depletion day, easy. As time goes on, right? Now my wife's starting to get agitated. You can't eat past 2 p.m. and it's a 24-hour fast. This chick lives on a farm. She's out of touch with reality. Where are most people at 2 p.m.? Work. My wife's a school teacher, teaches in a bad neighborhood. So she's eating her last meal at 2 p.m. in between classes and then comes home and takes care of a 4-year-old with me. Think she's happy? Then she's fucking hungry at night. And she's tired. I'm like, you know why you're tired? What's food at the end? The energy. You know what this chick's eating? She was prescribed fucking Adderall, crushed her appetite. Now she's all amphetamine up. Fucking, I know how to monetize on people and fucking tell people this is what you gotta eat. Don't eat past 2. No, fuck, you're not hungry because you're not hungry because you're eating fucking phentermine pills. You could starve yourself and lose fat. Fuck your shit with the moon and the spears. This is all this bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly.
The primal. Let's emphasize on the primal, the crushing a bull testicle and fucking fuck out of here.
Yeah, because when we were
how does the moon come into this? I'm so confused right now.
Because something with the moon and the fucking your endocrine system and ladies, your reproductive.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. Shut up. Oh, and this was it, right? It's not a keto diet. It's not. Ladies, it's not a keto diet, but I'm like, you have a keto meter to see if you're in ketosis. Am I missing something here? Oh, it's your own. Oh, I see what it is. And I read it. I'm like, oh, guess what? A bodybuilder from 1989 thought of this. All right. You weren't the first one to design this. So stop trying to fucking reinvent the wheel. You know why I'm angry? Because it's trickery. And it's playing on people's minds where I'm a real motherfucker and I'm real with these people. I live the real life. I live a real life and I'm real with these people. That's the draw. All this bullshit out there is to fucking monetize and take hold of people's minds and manipulate their minds to monetize for yourself. You're not really trying to help people, you're trying to help your fucking self. Sure. That's the truth.
I love that they market it as like instinctual or paleo or whatever. Because like, yeah, sure. Like if you walked past a fresh kill as a caveman, you'd look at where the sun is in the sky and you went, oh, fuck, it's 2:02 p.m. Guess I'm not eating that then. No, you'd be like, fuck that. I'm going to eat until I feel like I'm going to puke because I don't know when my next meal is going to be.
Yo, I'm like, this is unrealistic. You do not have to fucking to lose body fat and get in shape. Don't eat past 2 p.m. If anything, you're going to be slowing down metabolism even more by the starvation. Intermittent fasting isn't for everyone. You know this, your A1C numbers, etc. So she's got to really know a little bit more before you start telling people this shit. You know what I'm saying? She got a whole bunch of followers on certain podcasts and shit. I'm just fucking bashing because it started to play into my life in the negative parameter. You know?
Doesn't it show you the power of belief though? Because what I mean, and I don't know your wife obviously, but it sounds like she is sticking to it, but suffering pretty bad.
You know why? My wife is a soldier. She has more discipline than if you tell her to have 1 grain of rice, she's eating 1 grain of rice. Yeah. Maybe this, I think about this, you give leeway. So like in keto, right? If you tell someone you stay in ketosis if you stay under 40 carbs, what does someone do? I could have like 100. No, you can't have 100. Because that's why I say no carbs, because they'll probably eat 40.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I can have a little barbecue sauce.
Yeah. So maybe it doesn't apply to your wife if that's her. I mean, if we take the average person who's probably getting sucked in by that type of person, because they've sold it as like this shiny package and they believe in the package, whatever it might be, and now I belong to this thing. All of a sudden, they're willing to suffer so much more than they would with any regular workout program, any diet that their PT gave them that didn't have a name. You know, if this is just Jane's diet to lose fat, there's no way they'd be willing to starve themselves after 2 p.m. every day. But all of a sudden now you've created an identity and made them feel like they're part of a group and it's got some bigger meaning, right? Now all of a sudden they're like, they will suffer through hell for it. And it's just, you wish that you could create that sense of belief with the stuff that's just true. But you can't because it's not shiny enough, if you know what I mean. Like,
I know what you mean.
You can't jazzify it up enough because, unfortunately, it's boring.
Well, I would assume most people aren't going to be that compliant, right? So it will last for a few days. And then on one day, come 8 o'clock, they're eating a fucking gallon of ice cream, right? I would love to see the churn rate of the clients, of the people like you're speaking about.
Well, so that's good. They have this group Zoom, and my wife went in on a couple. You hear what people do. No one does it that strict. Oh yeah, I drank. I had 4 martinis and fucking whatever. But the thing also, the woman who runs this diet and who this is, you can drink also. I'm like, because you like to drink. And also this, ready?
So those calories are okay after too?
Bro, like, I'm not saying drink 4 martinis, but like
yeah.
we could have drinks though. Maybe it's because you like to drink. Oh, and I've also never heard this, ready? In the thing, when you do the keto prick on your finger, you don't have to change the needle out. I'm like, I swear, bro. You don't have to change the needle out. You could reuse it. There's your depth of knowledge. I'm a fucking knucklehead from a job site. I know that you don't reuse a fucking lancet on your finger. Boom. Wow. There you go. You're going to listen to someone how to lose fat who tells you not to change out the lancet, which could accumulate more bacteria than fucking you can know? I don't know. I'm not listening to her.
Wow.
You?
That's a lawsuit waiting to happen there.
Yo, word.
Diet worked great. I lost 5 pounds when I had to lose my hand to sepsis.
Yeah, you were like, what? Yeah.
I don't spend enough time watching other people's shit on social media because I'm missing out on this. I would enjoy to watch some of this shit.
Do you know one I've also heard, like, I mentioned this to my media guy, and he looks into shit. He's one of those. He goes, she's getting fucking smashed on Reddit. Oh, no, Reddit, right? I didn't go and look that far. I don't have to. How many guys you think are like me? I'm like, yo, this doesn't make any sense. I've been doing this motherfucker my whole life.
Sure. But the sad thing is people like her are making real money out there off of people's...
She'll fizzle out.
Off of people's suffering, complete lack of progress, putting people actually in harm's way in some regards there. But I suppose then the question then becomes, it's a harsh question, but is it partly our fault for being so gullible?
I think people are looking for something. So to this, right, what she with people,
and I don't mean that as a knock against your wife.
No, I know what you're saying. It's people who have who've done everything and have stubborn metabolisms. Yeah. This, I don't believe, is the way to do it. It is not. I've tried everything. This isn't the way. This isn't the one fucking magical pill. You know what I mean? That you have to starve yourself past to. It might work for you, but it's not going to work for the larger percentage of people. It's just not. You know what I mean? Do you agree with me?
Oh, no, I agree. It's just what's lacking is basic common sense, but I wonder if what we see as common sense, other people don't.
Yes.
So then the influence is easier, because they can be told basically anything, but they can't run it through their head, that essentially it's a calorie deficit, that's being created. There's not a whole lot really else going on there.
And when I ask that question, I don't just mean in response to that specific, I mean like the whole sunning your balls to get your testosterone up, cold plunges to make you live 20 years long, all of anything you can put under the fad category, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, to a degree, if the money is there to be made, can you, like iPhone can release a new iPhone every year that is no different to the last iPhone and charge you, I don't even know what a new iPhone is now, and people will rush to buy it. Who's the idiot in that scenario? Do you know what I mean? So is it an extension of that?
Listen, I get it. Some people have nowhere to go. They turned everywhere. I don't know what to do with my diet. I've tried everything and I got this fucking mom pouch still, And I believe, do I know she's eating fucking fen and fen? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
you know why I say that though? Because I've done them 20 years ago to lose fat. And I go, wow, I have to force my drink to drink protein shakes and I have energy till midnight. You're not eating past 1 p.m. Maybe this is what you're doing. And I go, I'm going to figure out how I can monetize on this because I got leaner. And I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull some bullshit out with a fucking caveman, with a female, with a vagina throwing a spear. And I'm going to do this and tell everyone you eat keto because I created a new keto. You just don't eat as much fat. Oh, wow. You reinvented the wheel, motherfucker. And then throw it with a spear and then don't eat past 2 and come out all thing, create a Zoom. Yo, you're smart. You got people. Good for you.
But, it's kind of an extension, I suppose, of where capitalism meets health and fitness, and they just have completely contradicting, priorities really at the end of the day, because you can't make money off people who understand what they need to do and are fit and healthy, right? Like it's a rabbit hole, but you can extend that, I'm sure, to the medical system, all that type of thing. So at some point you need people who are willing to not make the easy low-hanging fruit money, people like yourself, to just put out the boring messages, to just be like, no, actually this is the way, and there isn't, unfortunately, the secret is that there is no secret to this.
There is no super secret. Like even with what I'm like, yo, why can't you take that keto meal and split it up and have half here and then half it? You know, and this also, oh, if you're tired or not, you're not eating enough. Okay, so let's eat fucking 36 ounces of steak at lunch. You think I'm going to eat 36 ounces of steak at 2 p.m., then go back to work? You know what I mean? I'm going to eat and put myself into a Thanksgiving coma and then go back to my nursing job for 10 hours. What are you talking about? That's not a realistic scenario. I don't even want to talk. What you're going to do is sit on your couch and whatever. I did this all before, but you know what I mean.
No, but I mean, the experience that you talked about earlier kind of comes into play here, because as you're talking, I'm sitting here trying to think of fads that were going on a decade ago that are still around now. Right. And there's not a lot. No. Right. So that would be one, what is it, a litmus test, I suppose, would be, is that the right word?
Litmus test,
is to go back and see, like, was this a thing a decade ago? Right? And maybe it was, and it's just repackaged, you know, in some other type of way. But why did it need repackaged if it was so fucking good? You know, if it was so fucking good, it wouldn't need repackaged. You get what I'm saying?
I'm like the fast turtle. I'm not as attractive, but guess what? I'm going to fucking win the race because I know what to apply. I've been doing it. You're a fucking sprinter. You're going to sprint. You're going to fucking fail out. Me, I'm not as attractive, maybe because of the way I sound like from the street construction site. I use all these eloquent words and verbiage and all this bullshit with your fucking glasses on, whatever you do. But I'm there. I'm a little better than the turtle. I'm going to win the race.
So you know when you're dealing with these, let's say you've got a client, right, who sees some of these individuals that are spouting off this type of stuff, how do you go about, you know, educating them without belittling them, making them feel like they don't know
I like
anything?
to belittle them. Some of them.
Okay, sure, let's go down.
I do. That's how you get real though with some of them.
Okay, so like, how do you put
some
it
people, bro? I'm not gonna mention his name because I do genuinely love the guy, but he's fucking a mess, and it's like a battle for me. But like, and it's fun because I'm like, bro, like. I'm like, yo, one, I'm sure you know, I'm like, yo, stop fucking eating that shit. Stop smoking weed at night. I go, how about this? You like smoking weed every night? Give me 1 day a week the first week. Then after 3 weeks, give me 2 days of no smoking, right? Do 3, that's how you start stacking it up, right? Stop eating fucking sushi rice as your best snack and pitas and 2 bagels with lox every morning and dumping this much fucking, what do you call it? The vanilla sweetener to your coffee. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, bro, total messes. But it gets to a point, it's like, I look pretty good with my shirt off. I'm like, if anybody tells you look good with your shirt off, they're lying to you. I'm your friend. You look terrible. Thanks, Dick. I go, I'm helping you. Yeah. I go, you think any girls look at you when you go on vacation? He's like, oh, the ones that I don't do. I go, those are the ones that no one wants to fuck. That's who looks at you. That's the truth. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the
So sometimes you got to say the cruel thing to be kind type scenario.
Well, just to be real with them. Yeah. I'm fucking trying to help him. No, and I got to tell you, he did improve a lot. Like for him, he improved a lot. But you know, I actually like that sometimes. To fucking really, that's fair. You got to get real with them.
But do you think are people's tolerance for that type of feedback, if we want to call it that?
No, I'm pretty good at feeling out people. I don't think it depends the person.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying. Like, do you think
I'm good at reading people?
A lot of people have that kind of tolerance, or do you think that's something that's quite rare now and you need to moderate it a lot?
No, if I did that with most people, they wouldn't come back. I didn't do that right away. It was a long road. That's what I'm saying. Of comfortable.
You know, it's probably fair to say that if we're looking at least in the 30s and down, people are generally more easily triggered now, or offended, or whatever word you want to use. So like
soft.
Yeah. So like that kind of approach is great, and sometimes is what people need to hear. But if you then lose them, you've lost your student, if you know what I mean. So like how long do you have to spend with a client before you feel comfortable then to really be able to unleash
like that took like a while.
Sure.
I could have did it like month 7, right? But it took a while of like, hanging out, right? But like right away, I'll be like, yo, you shouldn't eat that shit. It's not good. I'm like, you're going to stay, fat. I do say that right off the bat because that's what they are
Mm-hmm.
for those people. If you keep eating that, and then what I do is in terms of, I go, yo, simple. I go, if it doesn't grow, don't eat it. Stop eating that bullshit that's fucking processed. Stop drinking sugar. You know how many people drink sugar, bro, all day? I'm like, I was astounded at that, but not anymore. Iced tea, soda, iced tea, stop that, you lose weight. I do it all step in stages like that. Then when I start to get a little harsher, they're doing it, and then they keep reverting back to that bullshit. I go, yo, why the fuck do you keep doing that? Didn't I tell you to stop doing that shit? Do you like me? I'm like, why are you coming here and swaying, just putting that shit back on? Why? I don't know. I like it. I go, stop. Stop that shit. I'm like, yo, you're not going to fucking improve, bro. You're going to fucking feel like shit. And then sometimes I go, yo, do you like fucking being fat? Your kids, you're going to be the fat dad around your fucking kids. You like that? I go, what do you think? You want? And I go down that whole fucking rabbit hole sometimes. Depends the person.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's one of the things that I think is important, why, especially with online, because obviously you've got less actual interaction. It takes longer to build trust in a relationship with clients. So giving a coach time is important and something I think gets understated, whether it's working out what kind of programming, dieting works and whatever, but also to build the kind of relationship that you're talking about there, where, like you said, you can't go in with an attitude like that on day one. You'd be out of business, right?
I'd be out of business. I'd never do that.
You need to have enough time to build a relationship with people so that when you can say the harsher truths, which they often need to hear, they're going to take it from the right place, that he has my best intentions and he is saying the things I need to hear that nobody else that supposedly cares is saying to me. But again, if you're swapping and changing coaches every 3 months because you don't look the way you want to look yet, you never get to that point where you have enough trust in that kind of relationship with a coach where they know you well enough, where they can actually really call you out on your bullshit and really dig deep into those kind of habits. You know,
I have to say, I think after the last, when I said, do you think about the girls that no one wants to bang? I got to say that was the changer. I'm not kidding, because I didn't see him for about a month. He came back, I go, yo, did you lose weight? He goes, I lost 22 pounds. I think that was the one. That was the hardest I went on him too. I swear that was the one, because I genuinely, you know, sometimes I get mad. I'm like, bro, and that was the one I think where it turned it.
Yeah.
He looked at myself and I'm like, dude, he always did this. I'm like, yo, you have like a whole person sitting on your midsection. I go, stop picking up your fucking shirt. You should never pick up your shirt ever again.
How you mentioned being a role model for his kids there, you know, and obviously like obesity rates seem to be leveling off, maybe even declining a little bit now. But how much of the role model model, I guess, do you think is a problem in our current society, where because it gets to a certain point where your parents are overweight, your friends are eating crappy food and whatever, like it's just normal to be overweight, right? In fact, now being that whatever percent body fat you are is strange, right? It's weird. It's an oddity, right? Eating, you know, if you were in a public place eating your chicken and salad and rice, that would instantly be seen as dieting, even though it's normal food.
I know.
So how much of that do you think is, you know, without people even knowing, subconsciously just leading everyone down this spiral? So
this is the thing about being a role model. Now, I always base everything off of fucking body fat, body composition, just because this is my lane. But just because I say it means that doesn't mean that you're a bad role model. You could work your balls off. You could have a great business and you could be a role model in that sense. But your physical appearance dictates a lot. It just does. All right. It just does. It's almost like 1 + 1 is 2. So you'll see more of them than not, though. Not always. It's not as common. Someone who's fucking borderline morbidly obese, but has a fucking crazy business, successful. Something's lacking somewhere. You know, that's why I always say, like, you know, being a role model in the sense of the vanity aspect, you know, some vanity is good. That if you know your son or your young ones, when they learn good eating habits and being in shape, and it becomes their time to go for job interviews or whatever it may be in life, and where they own a business and they approach a client, there's a different fucking, you know, aura that when you walk in a room without even opening your mouth. And then you can throw it all away once you open your mouth. That's up to you. But when you're in shape and you have a presence and you come in, it means a lot. So if you take 10 people who are applying for the same job, everyone has the same exact skill. You got fucking 9 people who are fat who can't see their dick, and then one guy who has abs out the wall that you can wash his laundry on. Who do you think's getting the job? The guy with the abs, almost every time. Do you disagree?
No, absolutely not.
No, I say it plays, that confidence plays into that as well.
Yes. 100%. 100%. That's why I harp down that lane. Not like, oh, vanity, you got to look good. Fucking, that's not the most important thing, but it plays a lot. and the other things that work into the other areas of your life. When you get, fitness it is the foundation for other things. I don't give a fuck what people say working out, and it is true that like it's almost like the foundation of your house, the way I believe. If you don't have a solid foundation, everything's going to fall eventually.
True.
You know what I mean? For your mental state and everything else. You could have a great business, great this and that. When you're fat and you fucking can't see a dick and your wife hates you, imagine that laying on top of her. That's why you don't fuck, because the way you look. Something's going to fucking dissipate somewhere. You know what I'm saying? In your life.
Well, another way to look at the foundation as well is the stronger that foundation is, when life would hit you, if it's a heart attack, cancer, or whatever it's going to be.
Boom, that's what I meant to say.
Right. That right there, the stronger you go into that, the better you're going to come out, because you're going to get waxed no matter what. You're going to get out of shape. A lot of things are going to happen while dealing with all those things. Now, the better the base is, the less detrimental it will actually become. But if it's already starting at a very, very low, bad base, you can die. And there's the big difference with that is
how many people with COVID, right? Who are healthy, who are just like, that shit was like a fucking cold. Where people who are really out of shape, it fucking killed them.
Yeah, true.
That was definitely a factor on their physical shape. Yeah.
So now we take that outside of a virus and now we apply it to heart issues, cancer, bigger type things. It's, I don't think people think that far.
They don't.
Out through all that.
Yeah, but like, it's just not healthy. You're teaching also with food, and what the thing is, when my system that I created, it's really, and I'm not selling it on your shit right now. It's good for the households to teach you a new way to eat. It's like just wow, that tastes really good. I didn't know fucking eating good could taste that good. Yeah, that's what I kind of put together and figured out over my lifespan of being in shape and, doing construction, being miserable, fucking freezing my balls off. I had to enjoy something, but how am I going to enjoy this and still stay shredded? That's why I would play around with shit, make up shit. Oh, I can make a sandwich on like a 0 carb wrap with chicken, put a low sauce, but mix in a little real fucking sauce, because that little bit of sugar ain't do shit, because I'm going to be burning calories all. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Little low fat cheese. If you don't like that, bro, then you have no hope, and I don't want to train you.
True. So what you're talking about is just basically substituting the crap that they're already eating.
Yes, with a healthy, good option.
Yeah, well, actually with a medium option, right? Because the healthy, good option would be this chicken, rice, or shit like that, right? But people aren't going to be compliant. But if you're able to take that same thing, right, and replace components of that, then and drop calories substantially.
Sugar.
Yeah.
Insulin levels is fucking, keeping insulin down is the most, most important things to have, other than inflammation, but fucking cardiovascular, et cetera. I always speak about that. Like, just to get in shape, bro, we got to plummet that insulin level down. Stop spiking it. What do you think diabetes is? It's when you break the insulin glands, like brakes on the car. I like to use like real life things as like analogies. That's how people absorb it.
So the way you go about that is reducing the sugar?
Yes. Because people eat only sugar. They do. Processed shit. I'm like, dude, your insulin gland is crying right now. I go, what are you eating? They'll eat bagels. They put this in their coffee. They eat a sandwich at lunch. They eat tons and tons of carbs. So it's also, I don't tell them to take it all out. They're going to fucking like heroin withdrawal. I just start to chop it down slowly in a realistic way. You know what I mean?
Just going back to kind of being in shape, you use like the job interview analogy there. It does have an aesthetic side to it, obviously, but how much of it kind of subconsciously do you think as well is that training is something that no one else can do for you? Getting in shape is something that no one else can do for you. Everyone will know they'll hire a coach and all you do is get given the path, right? How much on a subconscious level do you think people look favorably upon it because they know the type of life lessons, work ethic and things like that it instills? So like you grew up, your first job was in a very hard work ethic environment, right? Not a lot of people get exposed to that, not as many as they used to, right? So for a lot of people, unless they like go in the military or they play sports at a high level, they're very rarely put in an environment where it's like, you must be on your fucking A game today, tomorrow, the next day, whatever. Whereas the gym for a lot of us is kind of that intermediary where we get to experience that, like your max effort workouts or whatever at the weekend, like that top set is bring your A game, whatever it might be. How much of that do you think plays into that kind of subconscious subconscious bias and valuing of being in shape, and how important do you think that aspect is for people?
You mean like having an occupation, you're saying first in life is what you're trying to?
No, what I'm saying is like the gym and working hard in the gym teaches you work ethic. It teaches you to work for things that cannot be given to you. And even people who do not train, I think on a subconscious level know that. So like you said, in that job interview context, it's not just the aesthetic side of it. It's like, I subconsciously know that person can do the hard work when they don't feel like it, so on and so forth.
So I'm going to give you another story, right? We all know what cauliflower is, right? Right. So a friend of mine, MMA fighter, wrestler, all that stuff, nasty cauliflower, like unsightly cauliflower, not like the pretty one, the one that looks like mushrooms growing off your head. He went for a job interview, sales, high-level sales job. They made him remove it because it's unsightly. None of them wrestled clearly, but the way I would look at that is like, wow, this motherfucker puts in the work, and that's dedication to a certain level. So to what you're saying, yes, if I'm a CEO or hiring, I go, this guy has dedication and something to a certain point, put hard work into something. I don't know. They could just they could be great interviewers and fluffing me up. With this guy, that you can't fluff that up. You got to earn that shit, just like the cauliflower here. You know what I'm saying? That's the way to recognize that. Yes, good point.
Sure. Because I just think that, there's, like you said, you can come out of school and be book knowledge, heavy, but that doesn't actually mean you can necessarily apply yourself. Like, some people are great at memorizing and passing tests, but then you put them in a work environment and they're there sat on their phone or Facebook or whatever every 20 minutes. You don't know what their real work ethic is like until they're in your office or whatever.
Bro, it's like calluses on the hands. You have to earn calluses on your hands, right?
Sure.
It's not like, unless you like have 24 hours a day and you have fucking 15 porn fucking subscriptions, you have to earn your calluses. You can't buy them. You know what I'm saying? That's the same thing with abs, unless you have some, just do your stupid analogy, but you have to earn that. Exactly. Very, very good point.
Well, there's other things too, like there's built-in delayed gratification, right? To where, how I would see the difference between the training and work life is, but not really, as I'm kind of thinking this through as I'm saying this. In work life, you can put a lot of work into something to try to get it done, but yet it's not going to have the outcome that you're looking at. Maybe no outcome, right? And in the gym, it's kind of the same way. If you've been a meathead for a long enough period of time, you can put in a lot of work to try to get the abs or to get a 315 bench or whatever it's going to be. And it may never come, but the longer you've sought that, is a skill that would apply more, I would see, to like a work environment than anything else, because the difference with the work environment is there won't be a peak, to where you can be like, fuck yeah, all this training led to this, right? Where sometimes in a work environment that will happen, but most time it won't. It's just how it works. Most shit doesn't work, right? And probably the same, as I said, as I keep speaking, it's the same in the gym, because most of the shit that we all probably do doesn't have the impact or effect that we actually think it does.
Sure.
I mean, the whole science aspect of the whole thing is what parts are actually doing something, right? And trying to break apart that there's synergy between all of it. But sometimes there's a lot of shit that we're doing in the gym that you could just take out and probably get better results.
Yeah, definitely.
But all that process over a long period of time, that is what happens in a work environment. So to your point with how they carry themselves, their build and all that, I would want to know for how long. Right? Because we can flip the script on that and say somebody just started training a couple of years ago, they're pounding trend, they're controlling the side effects.
There's another fucking look at it, right?
Right. So now that same person being interviewed with other people could be looked at, okay, look, you hacked a system, to be able to get this done the easiest way possible. You really don't know how to work that hard. But what I'm seeing is deceiving, because of all that. Compared to the other person that may not be in shape, but has 10 years of experience in the trenches doing that work.
He just fucked up our whole thing.
No, I'm just looking, I like to look at things from different angles.
No, I do get it. This is a very, very good point.
But as soon as you put in for how long, like it's part of that discussion, like, dude, I've been training for 12 fucking years, sucks sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, I wasted 3 years doing, that's the person.
Yeah.
Right. That's the one. Right.
Keep going and going and going.
You can imagine the job interview, like, come up with a time when there's a dispute at work and you rectified it. What's your weekly dose of Tren?
Yes.
I just use myself as an example and taking my own experience of how hard I had to work for this and that, right?
Yeah.
And to a little side story to that, I wrestled a little bit in middle school. I started wrestling in high school, but then I stopped because I wanted to get jacked, right? So, when my high school had the rock climbing wall in the gym that steps out and all this stuff, and I fucking couldn't get the last one. I stayed there for like 3 hours, 2 hours until I got it. And I didn't know the wrestling coach was watching me after I came. He goes, "You're coming out for the wrestling team on Monday." But like, I wouldn't stop until I got the fucking last thing. It's how much time and work. Sure. You don't really see that. You're right. So someone like that who comes up the hours, you're like, these motherfuckers are stupid. I did fucking 12 weeks of trend. I look great. A super responder. Fooling us. Yeah. I'm just basing off of myself how much time and stayed in and not drinking and thinking that's the same individual. But that's a good view. I never even thought of that.
If we remove the outlier there, and go with the former. So why do you think then, being in shape now in the social media realm or even society, why do you think it's almost being demonized?
Because people are fucking lazy and don't want to do it. I mean, he's rubbing off on me right now with this rant and shit. But I mean,
I'm glad. Good.
I mean, that's
what I want. That's the response I wanted for the question.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you go from there.
No, that's what it is. And I think I'm going to try to word this carefully. Like, all this acceptance of bigger, it's okay, and I think what it is like, it's pushing being easy and lazy, and weakness is okay, and trying to take away strengths in certain parameter and weakening the youth. So like, even my media guy, what I'm going to talk about, he's a young kid, but he's on top of his shit. He's surrounded by 40-year-olds all the time. It's like speaking to me. And we were talking about the younger generation, and the communication skill is, I'm like, yo, they can't even communicate. In 2 seconds they were having this conversation. I was in the airport and I had to place an order for a sandwich, and it was like, I'm like, what? Dude, it was like a monotone on tone low robot, but worse. But this was everywhere. I went to an Apple store and every single employee was like that. I'm like, yo, we're fucked. That's what the outcome is. So they're winning in that sense. And it's not okay. I want to smash that fucking whatever they're trying to do by being ripped and all of them. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to make everyone weaker, and it's okay, and lazy and entitled.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It
sickens me. My balls are tense right now, to be honest.
But and
whatever's left.
And in that scenario, people would, let's say people who are maybe on the other side of that fence would argue about the vanity and blah, blah, blah. But, like, as we've just discussed, like, being in shape is not just about vanity and how you look. It's what it represents to achieve it. It's like, the guy who can afford to put the Ferrari on his driveway, it's not just about the Ferrari. It's what he's had to do to be able to afford the Ferrari. It represents, unless he just inherited it. But, we're assuming he worked his balls off, and good for him to being able to enjoy that, if you know what I mean. So, it's almost like as we see maybe a decrease there and a higher acceptance, you make almost a de-evolution. It's a strong word, I know, but you kind of just allow it in that regard, whereas if you go in some areas where maybe the Western culture isn't quite so strong, you go to like Japan, parts of Asia, even like Central Europe, you go somewhere like Serbia or Russia, if you're overweight and you go to a family gathering, your grandmother, your aunts could be like, you're looking fat. Yeah. You should do something about that. You know what I mean? But that's
they're
okay.
Like, it's not
yeah,
nice.
Do you know what I mean? In that society, that's still okay, because they accept the fact that actually that comes with negative consequences. And, although they may not be saying it in the best way, actually what they mean is like, you are unhealthy and it is not good to be unhealthy.
They're trying to help them.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now it's almost like you're the bad person for saying that because you hurt someone's feelings or whatever it might be. But sometimes you need to have your feelings hurt because
put you in check.
Life has pain either way, right? You can either choose that what's easy now and there's pain later on, or there's some pain now and easier stuff later on, right? It's
No, yeah.
Pick your poison, you know, and
you're exactly right.
The example that always kind of plays into my head with this now is my dad, who has passed away a couple of years ago now, but we used to go to Florida to like Disney and stuff when I was a kid. We were really lucky to be able to do that. But he was obese for his whole adult life. And we would always go in like July and August. And he wouldn't go on the roller coasters because he didn't like them. So he would be carting around these theme parks with us, not going on a single ride, carrying the bags and stuff at, you know, whatever pounds he was. And I was like, dude, you were doing that for us. And I appreciate that you did that for us, but that must have fucking sucked every moment, which was meant to be your family's happiest time.
Right.
And for you, it was probably miserable.
Oh, I can tell you,
I mean?
I can validate for fucking 1,000%
Yeah, but
certainty.
you know what I mean? But that's because
I've gone to places like that when I was the 300-pound power lifter, and it fucking sucks.
Yeah, so like you pick your
Bad.
suck.
It sucked bad, like terribly bad. Sweating, fucking lower back pumps. You know, you're planning your route. You know, we want to go down there, and it's like, okay, if we go there, there's a bench there. There's another bench there. Or they want to go over there. There's no bench. No, let's go there. You know, it's sucks.
So like,
it was like being a fat person, but with tons of muscle.
But I kind of fucking love part of it.
Sure,
You know,
Of course, dude. You weren't fat. I mean, you were
you
huge.
got
You were
three shirts you're going through. But anyhow, it's just.
but the point is,
sucked.
you pick your suck.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had no enjoyment of the park.
Yeah,
I liked the food because it was all shitty food.
You were fucking jacked
So-
up. People looking at you like, holy.
so like
fucks.
you know, you're picking whatever let's say whatever the easy option is now that leads down that path. You think it's the easy one, but it's really not. It's just the easiest one to do right now. Like if you looked at the amount of suck over the longevity of your life, it sucks way more to not be in shape than it does to be in shape.
Well, what confuses me about that movement that we're talking about, I guess it's body positivity or whatever we're speaking about, is I understand respect. You should respect everybody.
Yes.
Right. We're not saying that.
Yeah,
right.
No, absolutely not.
You know, but the pushback on that several years ago was kind of like health doesn't matter.
Yes.
All right. So then why in the fuck is Ozempic so popular with that crowd
Right.
now if health doesn't matter?
So bullshit.
Because that's why they're doing it, is to lose weight,
Sure.
you know, so they can live a longer life and be healthier.
Mhm.
So if that was,
Contradiction.
yeah, I mean, if that was the hill to die on, then why'd it change?
Mhm.
You know, and
Yeah.
well, we all know why, because it's easier, and it's,
Mhm.
you know, I'm not bashing that, because it's probably a net positive if you think it all through with all that. But it kind of blows up in the face of there was a while where it was healthy.
Mhm.
You know, being 800 pounds overweight is
What they're trying to say that is what you're saying.
yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be morbidly
But
obese.
now
okay.
it's changed.
Yeah.
That narrative
Now,
changed.
well, money.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You know,
Well,
The
influence.
devil should be green.
Well,
I
yeah,
always
no,
say.
no. I think it's influence, like you were
Yes.
talking about before. It's the influence has changed.
Mhm.
You know, to where the influence before was, you know, being morbidly obese is healthy,
Mhm.
right? Well, that narrative has changed, right? Because now there's money
Mhm.
in that, right? Where there's also money in not being healthy.
Mhm.
A lot of money
Yes.
in not being healthy,
Mhm.
right?
Tons. It's a
You know,
circle.
Yes.
You know that. We don't have to dive into it.
Exactly. So you see where it's
Yeah, for sure.
weird.
Mhm.
It's very
Another
weird.
thing, though, why I think the majority of people, most people, is they don't have any idea how to eat. They have no idea.
Yes, that's true.
And nor do they have the desire to educate themselves like we do.
Mhm.
That's what I really think. So I think if they had a little bit of education on certain things with foods, they would not eat them and probably be 40% less fat.
Oh, I would agree 100%.
I think that's
with
the
that.
majority of
No, I
people.
think
I'm like,
that's fair.
dude, if you knew how bad eating a bagel was and all those carbs in the morning, you know, those types of carbs consistently with insulin. I mean, we dive into the fucking molecular structure and shit, but they don't need to know that. I think it's just a lack of knowledge for the majority.
Mhm.
Some people know how bad it is and they're just fucking something with their head. They just got to eat that shit.
Yeah.
Their cocaine. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Then there's the other people like us who know everything. The
Mhm.
majority of people, though, of the masses have lack of knowledge. That's
Yeah,
what
and they don't want to know.
They don't wanna know.
I mean, there's a lot of topics I don't know dick about, right?
I don't
At
know
all,
most
you know?
about anything.
Yeah,
This is my
exactly.
thing. I'm
Yeah,
obsessed
yeah,
with.
Yes. And so how it makes you wonder, like, how many other things are we gullible
Yeah,
of,
absolutely.
right? Because it's, I can remember, you know, prior social media, so I'm dating myself, you'd see some shit on the news that dealt with the strength training or nutrition or whatever it was. And it's so fucked up.
Oh,
you know, it's so fucked up. And because you know it, you're like watching this, you're like, this is so fucked up. Right. But
what, speaking negative was what you're saying?
Whatever they'd be presenting on the news at the time, if it was a diet fad or some exercise bullshit or whatever it was just categorically wrong across the board, right? And we would know it because we're in that field, right? But everybody else, millions of people watching this are not in that field, right? So that next segment could be on fucking construction or some shit like that, right? And they're doing that whole thing, and I'd be like, yeah, I didn't know that, right? Right? Because I don't know shit about that. That's what you're talking about. Most people, they don't know. They just see whatever's that most popular,
spits it out.
Whatever spits it out, you know, whatever that narrative
and
is.
That sadly is where the downside of science can be, is that having a science background, unfortunately, if you're good enough at statistics, you can make a data set say almost anything you want.
Anything.
Within reason. So like when you get studies that are taken and want a certain outcome, even if you don't get it, you can fudge the numbers here and there, do a different analysis, and all of a sudden, as long as you get that little statistically significant p-value or whatever, boom, headline. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter if there were 100 different variables that all played it, like the World Health Organization one about like processed meat causing cancer and stuff like that. What they didn't tell you is that the group that ate more processed meat were also closer to like cable towers, smoked more, drank more. You know, all these were more sedentary. They didn't own.
There's your randomized test.
Yeah. So that, you know, the study genuinely did say that, but what they then neglected to mention was the 8 other contributing factors that we absolutely know all contribute to that outcome too, because. Well, that doesn't sound great. Oh, just so you know, eating more processed meat and these 8 other things increase your likelihood of cancer. Right? So, like, unfortunately, in those scenarios, A, you can manipulate studies, and B, making things sound sensational makes money.
Well, that's everything. I mean, because I can sit, if we just look at hypertrophy training, just dial it back to something we all know really well. If we wanted to know how to create the best hypertrophy program, and then we just went online and started looking at, you know, science and all this other kind of stuff. If you look at all the science guide demographic, I don't know how to explain what that is, and you don't know a whole lot about it, you're going to get to a point this is how I think most people are. They're going to be like, fuck it, I ain't dealing with this.
Overwhelmed.
No, this is too fucking confusing. I'm
overwhelmed is what you're saying with information.
Yeah, I'm just going to go do what I fucking have always done. Just screw it. You know, because we like that, you know, but when it's an overabundance of all that, and it's all coming from authorities that know all that, and then they're all working in the margins and not talking about the main meat of the whole thing, then as that observer looking into all that, we're confused. Like, well, what the fuck is the best, right? Because when you're dealing with the bulk of all of it, that doesn't get discussed enough. The simple shit.
It's too much information overload. They don't know what lane to pick.
Yeah, and they're trying. That's the thing. Like, they're trying to find the best options, which is leading them to the science discourse or whatever it's going to be. They're looking for those best options, which this is where it gets depressing in a way, because you got the fish on the line. Right.
Yeah, they're
not really on the line. They're nibbling on the line. You can feel that shit. Right. They're on there. Right. But then there's so much. It's just like, fuck it. I'm going to go, you know, someplace else. So then some idiot like you were talking about reels them in with their pole. Yeah. You know, because they like took another thing stupid.
Like Stan Efferding said something like, aspartame and you know, artificial sweeteners are proven to help people lower insulin levels and lose body fat, and also to initiate cancer growth, you'd have to eat like 1,000 packets a day. Whenever you're someone, that stuff causes cancer, I'm like, do you know how much you have to consume of that to initiate cancer growth? But I'm like, you'd have to take a box a day or 2.
Well, what the fuck? That's a stupid argument for me too, because what the fuck do you think the sugar soda's doing?
Yeah.
Like, they're both, you know what I'm saying? So let's assume that's true, and it's as you pointed out, it's not, right? You'd have to consume so much of that. So what you're saying is that the better option is the one that we categorically know is fucking people up more than any other.
Or to this, who I was speaking about, pushing their diet onto women. Sure. No artificial sweeteners, spikes insulin. To what percentage? Is it the same as having a latte from Starbucks? What are we talking about? It's proven it will help people stage down to lose weight. No aspartame, no nothing. You know how many times a year they should ingest something sweet? Never. Ever. No. That's not real to me.
No one's going to do that.
It's proven that this works. Truvia, it's made from sugar. Shit ain't fucking bad for you. How much are we going to eat a day? It helps people kill their sweet craving. Shut up. Let people have it. Sure. What's its own spin? This is what makes me
It's
mad.
like the ultimate form of selection bias there, right? Because I can't remember what category aspartame is in like cancer. It's like level 1, 2, 3. Like level 1 is like standing in Chernobyl, if you know what I mean. Like, so like it might be a level 5, and like level 4 is like direct sunlight, mobile phones, Wi-Fi. So it's like, well, if we got to worry about aspartame, we're already fucked, because you're listening to this on a phone. You've probably been, I would hope you've been out in the sun today, and you connected to your Wi-Fi, so you're already fucked anyway. Yeah, bro. In that regard, if all this is to be worried about to the same extent,
that has way more of a cancer-causing potential than fucking the little aspartame that you put in your body. And to that, how much, like, with her diet, how much what are we talking about? It's minimal amounts of insulin into the body, but kills the sweet craving. The ratio of importance. You know what I'm saying? That's all. It's fucking to my rant to that fucking woman.
You've I want to, if you don't mind, we just change lanes.
Sure, go ahead.
You've made quite a lot of content, posts, etc., about TRT and things like that, and how. And forgive me if I'm misinterpreting your stance based on the posts I've seen, etc. But in that, a lot of people are perhaps jumping to it too early, or aren't doing the other stuff that they should be. So, like, in your opinion, to generalize, what is your opinion on TRT therapy when it's prescribed correctly?
Okay.
And how realistically do you think it's something that is almost going to become a necessity? And the reason I say that is because, we've all seen the data on like testosterone levels dropping over the years, and we can debate about why that really is and so on and so forth. But the reality for most of us is that people are going to have to work longer for most of their lives now, whether it's because mortgages are more expensive or 2-income households are needed. So if I have to work until I'm 70, so for example, if I were to go back and live in the UK, by the time I can claim a state pension would probably be 70 or maybe 72. So if I have to work until 70, well, how many 70-year-olds are actually capable of working? You get what I'm saying, right? So, like, what's your general stance on it? And do you think over time it's almost going to become a given based on the way that kind of population and lifestyle is going?
Yes. So I could speak about this in all different angles, right? So TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement, only should be implemented upon symptoms and necessary the way you feel, all right, and how optimal you live in your life. Some people may never need it. My dad was 67. His test levels were like 680. He was just like a ball of hormone. Lost his hair at like 19. You know what I'm saying? He's like a gorilla. Where other guys drop off at like 31. So now to this. Okay, you don't have a family yet. Your test is 230. You have all the symptoms: fat, lethargy, depression, etc. Let's keep your fertility up. Implement HCG, late egg cells, etc. All right. So there's all different. So I'm not always against very young people doing it, only if it's necessary, but the majority do not need it. Let's be clear. Like, it's very far in between. A 30-year-old needs TRT. What that comes is because they're just justifying the bridging between their juice cycles. I'm on TRT, which is a thumbs down for 2 factors. 1, you're not thinking about a family now when you're 23, because you're 23, right? 2, you're damaging your endocrine system and your HPTA and fertility, which you're not thinking about, but you will when it becomes that time. And also, you're justifying your steroid use. But at the end of the day, also, dummy, your receptors are not clearing out. You're going to get worse of a response the next time you cycle. They're just justifying their TRT use. Also to this, in my area, you get a lot of guys who live that life, fucking boats, fucking go out drinking. They live a shitty lifestyle. They think at 46 years old, shooting a shot of test is going to be the fountain of youth. No, motherfucker. Let's look back at your life, your habits. How about eating better, right? Cleaning up your diet, stop fucking drinking, exercising minimal 3 times a week. and see how you feel then. That alone will raise up your hormones hundreds of nanograms per deciliter, just your lifestyle change. Then maybe we could talk about adding testosterone in. But it's also with testosterone replacement therapy, injecting testosterone isn't the definitive first route. There's other avenues to take first. I don't really think the herbs are going to work that much, let's be real. But other medications like enclomiphene, which doesn't have the negative effects of Clomid, zooclomifene, which all has the positives, to initiate testosterone, natural testosterone production, endogenous, from your Leydig cells. If that doesn't initiate enough of a symptomatic response, then we move on to exogenous testosterone. Always start low, start high. I'm sure you guys heard horror stories from clinics that I'm like, holy fuck, they prescribed you how much? And then you went to another clinic and then they dropped down your level to this far without even a step down. Now they're fucked because their androgen levels were so fucking high, their sensitivity is so decreased. Now they're fucked. They don't even know how to level back. You know what I'm saying? So really, there's different avenues. I can talk all about this, but really it's the last resort is when you need it and it's necessary. But not only just, it's not for physical appearance, it's for your life. Depression, your mood, health, etc. Having low testosterone is just as negative as having way too high. You know, it wreaks havoc on so many fucking blood markers, etc. It's also this, it's for your cognitive health. You know, I've had many friends who were in their 50s, they're like, dude, I just, the last 3 months, I can't get out of bed. Doctor prescribed me Lexapro. And how I know this is because of a weird ability to absorb knowledge. I used to go to a concierge doctor, you know, one-on-one blood work. And depression is in my family riddled, right? All the men. He goes, your dad doesn't need testosterone, doesn't need it. He's like, he doesn't need those depression medications. He goes, testosterone. I said, why? He goes, it elevates all these chemicals naturally. I advised my friend to start taking some testosterone replacement therapies in his 50s. Dude, no medication. Hasn't been depressed since. Just by that. You know what I'm saying? So it's all different.
Painfully aware.
Yeah. You know, I'm just regurgitating all the knowledge you guys know. You just want to hear me say it on there. But you have to treat the symptoms first response. If you want to just look good and shit and that, you got to look at your lifestyle first, brother. That's what we got to look at first. And for the young guys out there, you know, that's got to be the very last option. For guys who do have low T, shooting me, if they're 31 years old, don't have family, I've seen enclomiphene do remarkable things to someone's markers, like taking tests. Therefore, you wouldn't even initiate any fertility issues. If anything, you'd be helping them. Sure. You know?
So do you think a lot of clinics are just skipping that step because...
I think a lot of clinics are uneducated.
Okay.
I'm like, I hear these things and I hate saying I'm not, and like, I don't want to, I'm not a doctor, but I almost am. A general practitioner is a jack of all trades, master of nothing. But even at certain clinics, you have to go to the correct clinic. And it's crazy how I'm a fucking construction worker and I learned this shit wearing work boots, reading my phone and books in 30-degree weather. I don't understand what goes on. I really don't. I'm baffled at the misinformation that they hand out. I'm not that smart. I'm not. I just have a weird ability to retain information and regurgitate to people. And how I also, when, you know, I had fertility problems from all the steroid use I did when I was younger, and it was a fucking nightmare. That's why I'm adamant about HCG use, these guys, to avoid the problems. I tell these young guys, I'm like, you lucky motherfuckers have me. I had fucking this guy up the block who knew nothing to avoid these issues that I had to deal with. Some listen, some don't. I go, listen, I could bring you to fucking water. I can't make you drink it.
One response I've had to that with HCG is like, oh, well, you know, if I get my clinic to give me HCG as well, it costs this much extra a month. And I was like, okay, do you know how much a cycle of like in vitro therapy or whatever you want to call
That's
it?
10 HCG cycles, brother.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like you're trying to save pennies now. It's going to cost you so much later on.
Exactly.
You know, fertility, you know,
Kids
other fertility
way, though,
treatments and all that.
Young guys don't think that way.
You mentioned about people using TRT as like a cover or an excuse to bridge between their steroid cycles. So on that, you know, I imagine, and Dave, when both of you kind of started using, off and on was a thing, right? And I imagine the golden rule was probably, as I would imagine, would be like the time on is the time off or something around that. And that has almost disappeared, I would say. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's impatience? Do you think people are scared that, you know, like for guys who started whenever and did that, they all seem to do just fine. I mean, we had Justin Harris on the other week, and he was saying bodybuilding hasn't really gone anywhere since the late 90s, early 2000s, when off and on still kind of existed. Maybe not at a super high level, but you get my point. So why is it all of a sudden now it's like off and on cannot work, and now we have to do all this in between so that we never come off?
So two things to this, right? I think social media and how people monetize using their bodies on social media forces them to stay on high amounts of drugs year round and being shredded. That's one. And two, I'm going to speak from my own personal experience. My breaks when I was younger became shorter and shorter and shorter till non-existent because I just wanted to be big all the time, how good I felt. And being off, I didn't have the knowledge I have now of consistently maybe taking HCG for longer at higher dosages. And maybe I fucked up my endocrine system permanently where I had to take something that supported it consistently, even on my time off, to support, to initiate testosterone from my Leydig cells and then go back on. I didn't know this back then. The knowledge, even the information really wasn't there yet 20 something years ago. I would have done that and take bigger breaks. One, I would have been, my fertility issues wouldn't have been there. It was fucking took me a year. And two, I would have gotten better results. I just knew how shitty I felt. Like, just say I did a 6-week cycle of HCG. I knew how shitty I felt by week 10. I'm like, fuck, bro, my dick don't work. I'm losing. I have no pump. I was low where I didn't have to be low, but the information wasn't there for me to do it.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So there's two views. I think social media's influence with all these kids and fucking have to be jacked, and even older guys have to monetize. This is how they make their living. I got to be shredded and jacked year round, forcing drug use year round. And what it's also is forcing and manipulating young minds to take steroids, which is a very big negative.
Sure.
Where kids, just train and eat for years, build a solid foundation before you start introducing drugs in your body. What are you going to do? Build your body on drugs right out the gate? That's dumb.
Yeah. In my case, that shift happened before social media, right? So it used to be 10, 12 weeks, dependent, upon where my strength was, on how long I'd cycle for a meet. Then all the rest of the time would be off. Sure. And then
would that be kind of based on like 2 meets a year? So like 20 to 28 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if there were other meets, it was like a bench meet. Shit, that didn't really count, but 2 would be the main ones. And so there was availability and then affordability. So both of those played into it because the shit wasn't easy to find, and then when you're broke, it's not easy to afford. And as my career continued, then people started to tell me that it's just switch compounds. So these are like off-season compounds. These would be what you're going to take before a meet. Then you just switch it up through. And then the availability was more, it was way more available. But then the affordability also dropped back down. So it's, no research being done, just being around an environment that this is what you're supposed to do. You blast up through here, then you pull off. Don't pull off, but you reduce substantially. And then pull back up again. Then when you pull off and you reduce, it's completely different compounds with the thought of when you reintroduce the other ones, they're gonna kick the way they should. You can't take the same ones, all the time. So in other words, it goes from, high androgens, to very low, more anabolic, very low androgenic.
You did heavy androgens for the meats, the strength, stimulate central nervous system stimulate.
And then it was all based upon strength drop, so it would stand very, very low dose, more anabolic. And then if the strength fell under a certain marker, then 3 cc's of test was going in.
What was the acceptable drop out of curiosity?
10%.
So if you drop below 90%, it was kind of like I've dropped stuff.
And that would have to be on more because we had max effort stuff. So we always had a gauge, right? Sure. So we always kind of knew exactly where that was at. And it couldn't be a one-off. It's like, look, this has been, a few times now, and usually just one big fucking shot.
Let me ask you this. What drugs do you think had the most positive effect on your strength? What compounds?
Man, all I really fucking took was test and equipoise and
basics,
D-ball and shit like that. And
halotestin, never mess with that.
I couldn't get the halotestin. But even with like the
you didn't have a guy who took a trip out to Long Island and come back to where'd you go up here in Ohio?
Yep.
That guy could have made a fortune.
But even with like the general, the rhyme I created over a period of time is the meat came closer, you lowered the jabs and up the tabs, right? So the orals were avoided most of the time, but then they'd be blasted the last couple of weeks. And that's just thinking of half-life and shit like that. Like, what good is 1,000 milligrams of test going to do me 2 weeks before meet, or a week before meet? That's fucking stupid.
The D-ball.
The B-ball. But things like the Anadrol, for me personally, for a lot of the people I knew, we couldn't use because it almost always led to something tearing.
Wow, really?
And I don't think the Anadrol today is the same as what it was.
No, it's not.
There's definitely differences with that, because I'll hear people tell me shit like, I'm taking 200 milligrams of Anadrol. I'm
200 milligrams?
There's no fucking way. I mean, we'd have to break them in half.
Dude, it took 25 a day back in the day, and it was like
200 milligrams, you just be your nose bleeding walking around. Sure.
You would think, right? Because just one Anadrol 50 was enough to create those issues for me, like nosebleeds, back pumps, all this other kind of shit. And then it was just so frequent, like, no, I'm done. We're done with it. Even going half, would lead to that same thing. And so then it was D-ball and stuff like that.
The basics.
And just the basics. But there wasn't a large selection. And then if there was a selection, I was doing, you got I call it test math, right? So it's, if something was to cost $400, I don't care what it was, a coat or whatever it was. In my head, I'm thinking, how many bottles of test can I buy for that? Right. So, and the drugs were the same way. It's like, what am I going to get the greatest amount of milligrams out of per dollar? Right. And that was wrong. That would be one thing I would change, right? Because the strength of the components are way different. Like the shitty Stenox crap that I was taking was cheap as fuck, right? That didn't do shit. But it was
DHEA.
It was cheap as fuck, right? And
for a reason.
Yeah, you're like 200 milligrams, $5 like, give me all of them, And meanwhile, that's where the Parabon would come in. Like the Parabon, you fucking kidding me? 76 milligrams. I can get 1,000 milligrams for the same price, and that's
meanwhile one of those is
I mean, so it's a good thing that the education has gotten better, because that helps from that. But how it turned into just one huge long cycle over a period of time, then would kind of be that. And then learning the half-lives of different,
But did you notice a positive effect when you switched to that? Did your performance increase on average year round when you stopped coming off and started bridging more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it reinforces it, right?
No. A lot changed. I went from a point where I was done with the sport, torn pec, rehab, and then moved to Columbus to train. So the training changed completely. The environment changed completely. The people I was training with consistently changed completely. There's a lot of factors that all probably played a way bigger role in that than that.
Sure.
They just all seem to happen at that same time.
Yeah.
Ask me back then, I probably would have told you 100% that was it.
Sure.
But you provide distance and you start to see, especially now, because you can see a lot of those factors that kind of played into that time period. It wasn't just Westside. There are a lot of other clubs that are like that. Clubs like that don't exist to the same degree anymore. So you see that taken away. So it gives a different perspective looking back on it, because it's something you take for granted. Like, this is just how all crews kind of were. And then you look back and say, well, no, there's a lot of variables there.
Sure.
Now, how important those variables were can be debated, right? Because I can sit here and say they're largely important, but if they are, then why are lifters way stronger today than they were then? And that ceases to exist in the same capacity it did before. So there's the realistic.
I just think it'd be interesting to ask like a spectrum of lifters who were all there using around that kind of transition point. Like, did things actually get better when you stopped coming off? Or did you reach new levels of performance that you'd never reached before, or whatever? Are we? So the question then becomes like, are people actually better off?
Well, that'd be hard to tell, because when that turned, when that turning point was, it wasn't just the environment I was in. It was like every lifter I knew. It was common, like, you don't go off.
Yeah.
Right. So you would be viewed as being an idiot. you know,
Yeah.
to actually do that,
Mhm.
you know, and a lot of it how to deal with, you know, you're spiking it and it's going to drop way down. And I can give you a million excuses as to why that was the best way
Sure.
on how I validated it
Mhm.
at that time, which are all kind of false.
Mhm.
But you don't have a good A-B comparison
Sure.
unless you're looking at just straight drug-free lifters compared to, because it was pretty much all
Yeah.
everybody.
You know what I actually was educated on not that long ago is one of my coaches actually from an online program was his powerlifter, was a powerlifter, pretty decent level competitor. Like he knows Donnie Thompson. He named a couple bigger names. And I didn't realize the milligram of drugs that these guys did was comparative to like bodybuilding dosages with tests. I didn't know the dose was that high, and it's just purely just the goal was for strength.
Well,
Not for
sometimes that's
cosmetics.
not what you really think either, because there's certain, if I was peaking or training for a meet, there's certain benchmarks that I'm looking for when I'm using heavier compounds. Like, am I recovering? You know, not all drugs are real, right? And this is one of the things with one of the very first Swiss panels that was on PEDs. You know, I'm listening to all these guys talk about half-lives and all this other kind of shit and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there and it's driving me kind of fucking crazy. Because it's like, do you live in the real fucking world? Like, fucking, I don't even know the test is test. Like, it says fucking cypionate. It might be propionate. I don't fucking know. You know, so it's, you know, and I had people say, you know, with half-lives, here's how you want to structure this cycle because this half-life, you know, introduce this here. And then my question was, how in the fuck am I going to know all this is real? First off, then how do I know the dose is what it's supposed to be? Right. So there would be cycles that I would be training for the meet and say that by the time it came around, it might be fucking 4 grams. Right. But that's assuming that
It's real.
It's real. Right. And I'm telling you, it probably fucking wasn't because my
maybe 2
benchmarks,
grams.
my benchmarks weren't being hit. So I had to bring it up with the assumption that the shit's probably not
Watered
fucking
down.
real. So I got to a point where what I started doing, if it was orals and I had 500 orals, I took them all out of the bottles, put it in a bag, shook them the fuck up, then put them back in the bottles again. That way, if there's a fake, because and I think this happened to me once. You know, you're taking your shit, then you go through one bottle and now you move to the next and that next is fake. And that's going to run whatever period of time or that next batch. And then bam.
I ran into that too, though.
Yeah. So every fucking thing. So I would use my old EQ bottles, which are like the 50 milligram ones. And I'd pull all the test out of that, put it in that fucking empty bottle, you know, and that way, if something's fake, it's being dissipated, you know, within all that to give me a better idea.
Wow.
Of
And you
what
base it off of that total, whatever is in there.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
I'm basing it upon where
I'll be honest with you, I
training
didn't
is.
run into that too much. Like, so in the early 2000s, everything was like Mexican, but like Quality Vet,
Yeah.
Tokyo. Do you know these brands or no? How old are you?
32. But I
Do
know.
do you know these brands?
Yeah,
You're like an encyclopedia, I think, a little
Yeah,
more than me.
yeah.
I'm getting that feeling. You know these brands?
No, yes.
It was all real. Who knows when it got here, what they did uncapping them. I didn't know
Sure.
people do that and water down. How I could tell this. And then they started making it, which I didn't know people made it.
Yeah.
I just thought whatever these labs, you know, the label looked great.
Mhm.
And I could tell the disparity. I was taking this one sip in it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to stay with that brand. It's great. Then all of a sudden, one bottle, I'm like, it was definitely like a quarter of what it should have been. Now, I don't know if the guy was giving it to me was doing that or the guy making it doing it, whatever it was. But I did run into that problem for a very short period of time.
No, I knew people personally that would uncap bottles, pull half of it out, put canola oil in
Canola
it,
oil.
or whatever oil. It didn't fucking matter.
Not even like
Whatever.
the proper oil.
Well, just whatever was in their fucking
I bet
kitchen,
that's done.
and then put it in there, and then recap it. Then that's what they would sell.
It's
That's how they had their
Double
shit,
their money.
right?
Yeah.
Well, not doubling their money. It's how they paid
Oh.
for their own shit, you know. So they got an empty 100 cc vial they're pulling out, you know, and that
Strong.
was. And before that, it was the metal caps,
Yeah.
and they would just slip the syringe under the cap,
Yeah.
you know, then siphon it out that way, and then put it in
Yeah.
there. No, it's totally fucking serious, you know. And you know, so the ampules were very fucking hard to fake.
Yeah.
So I leaned towards those a lot.
You know those are probably
You know,
because they're
because
sealed.
yeah, it's I mean, how are you going to fucking slip? a
Even if
needle
they're
in an
underdosed a little, they're all the same then.
Yes, yes,
I got
yeah.
you.
So it was a different time,
Yeah.
you know, and that was the Mexican era. Then that dried up.
See, why I think it was so heavy and like nothing was, we had such an abundance is because the Russians used to bring it in
Yeah,
and we live right on the water and it was everywhere.
Yeah,
Like
now-
whatever you
yeah.
wanted.
yeah.
you know?
Now with underground labs, I don't know. it's not to their benefit to underdose, right?
Yeah.
Because they want repeat customers.
Right.
You know, so I don't think it's as bad now as it was.
But I also tell these guys this. I'm like, yo, I don't, they all do. You know how many guys on like, they DM me a picture of something, I'm like, underground. No, but there's no pharmaceutical company with a muscle guy on it.
Like a flex arm is
Yes, no pharmaceutical. Like that's not pharmaceutical one. Yeah. All right, and no pharmaceutical company makes anything at 400 milligrams. The selling point.
Yeah.
All right. One that's going to hurt. You have to put it. You have to put stuff in there to make it so it doesn't crash. Whatever. Right. But I'm like, historically, if you look at it, no, like pharmaceutical testosterone is made at max is 250 milligrams. In Europe is an Tate. I go, if anything, they even make 100 milligrams Cypionine. Nothing's 400 milligrams. I'm like, but let's call it at the end of the day, right? If you're taking something and it's clean, maybe, and there's not some Rottweiler running around as the motherfuckers, whatever he's doing, you know what I'm saying? And it's clean, stick with it.
I bought a bunch of shit one time that had Bulldog on it. Right? It was a fucking literally, it was a pit bull that was on it. I mean, the sales
years ago, or like
many years ago.
Was it British Dragon?
British.
Was it
I
Tokyo?
Can't remember.
Was it Tokyo?
It might have been Tokyo Labs.
Tokyo Labs. That was good back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wasn't from Tokyo.
Yeah. The sales pitch is like, this is what they give the pit bulls when they fight the pit bulls. You know, make them more aggressive, shit like that. Like fuck yeah, give it to me. You know, stupid shit like that. But I don't even know where I was going with all this.
I don't know either. We just started talking about this shit. Oh, I asked you like the difference. What I ask you, what made you stronger? If you notice anything, like so, I remember like I brought up like halotestin, right? I tried halotestin one time. I competed one time. I would never ever do it again. And
compete or halotestin?
I competed on halotestin. I took halotestin one time.
Yeah, so right? You'd never do halotestin. Okay,
so. I had real Upjohn halotestin, these little pink pills. I took, dude, I didn't know dosage. I took like 1 5 milligram pill. Dude, I lost my fucking mind. This stuff is way more androgenic than tren. And the veins literally in an hour were spilling out of my body. But it made me crazy. And I only took it for 2 weeks. It's one of the strongest things I've ever taken. Right? It's the only time I took it. But what it did to me mentally was crazy. It was insane. But what I also learned that was, one, never take halotestin again. One. And two, is that I listened when I competed, right? I just did it for the experience. And it was cool. I did a big show. I almost won. And I sucked down to 154 pounds, but I was like a lean 170. I just listened to people. Yeah. When I started eating like a rhino after that, I went up to 217 in like weeks. People are like, how could that happen? I'm like, oh, what could happen? Trust me. I got edema, I stopped peeing the whole nine. My dad's like, why don't you do it like that? You look better. But after that, I was always hovering around like 189, 190 pounds. After that, I was never under like 205. I permanently put on 15 pounds. Then I started reading about Dan Duchesne's body opus. You know, and he was very, very extreme in his methods, but it worked. Yeah. You know, carb depletion, certain kinds of carbs. But that's where I'm like, yo, this depleting and reintroducing glycogen into my muscles. I even tell guys, you could lose body fat and simultaneously get bigger if that's what the goal is. You know, it can be done.
Sure. I mean, the thing with halotestin is that it's such a strong effect on the adrenergic receptors, like the adrenaline receptors, that like, and if you're someone who's naturally sensitive to adrenaline, like someone who just gets anything out of caffeine, it's just going to be like you've taken speed, basically. So like the thing that I don't get when people take it is that they'll take it for weeks leading up to a meet. I'm like, if you're on a rest day, are you slamming 5 scoops of pre-workout at home? Do you know what I mean? Like the whole thing, halotestin is not going to put 10 pounds of muscle on you. It is going to rev up your nervous system like nothing else though, right? Dude. So like, why are you taking that at home? Like it's, you know what I mean? Well,
they don't know how to use the compound. Yeah,
precisely. And then I'm not saying it is a very harsh drug and you're absolutely right to say that, but also taking it every day is stupid. Like if you're training 3 or 4 days a week, take it then when you actually need it. Don't take it at home and you're just sat there jittering trying to.
It's more of an immediate need type of compound.
You know, and it's the same with like methyltren and stuff like that. I've seen people taking that daily.
Methylated oral tren?
Yeah, so it's methyltrianolone, so it's a little bit different, and you can get it in injectable and in tablets. It'll wreck you in days. But in injectable, it's like super fast acting tren, but it's very similar to halotestin. And again, they'll take it for days, and I'm like, dude, it's
not necessary.
This is not what it's used for, you know? If you're a bodybuilder, maybe you take it the last couple of days leading up to your show to get that super hard vascular look that you experience, but like no one is taking that for a month.
It's funny you said that because I mistimed it.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I looked my best 2 weeks, like for 4 days, I took the 5 milligrams. I was like, oh my God. I changed it in an hour, and then it kind of subsided because I didn't know to increase the dose. You know, before I was 19 or 20 years old, you know, but like it took it for literally those 3 days. I was like, holy fuck, bro. It was crazy. Very, very strong compound.
Yeah. So I just think it gets underestimated that like not all drugs are muscular in nature necessarily. Like some.
That is one of them.
Yeah. Some have a much more neurological effect, which is very fast acting than muscular. And, you know, that means that, you know, like an oral, super short half-lives, and you don't need to be taking them every day, you know, and that type of thing. And that's a lot of the time why they end up doing so much more harm.
Yeah.
Because it's just stupid use, you know, especially when it is then a compound which is so strong per milligram.
Yeah.
You know? I wanted to just cycle back to the second question. I asked you two together, which I shouldn't have done. I'm sorry. So like, with us, like now as a population, probably having to work later into our lives and testosterone levels dropping, do you think TRT is probably going to get to a point where like almost anyone 40 plus, it's going to be like a given that's going to be...
If needed.
Yeah.
Yes, if needed to prolong longevity and to live optimal. That's why. I remember sitting in a diner a few years ago, 5 years ago, and I looked at a table of old men, but they weren't that old. They were falling apart, like bones and T-shirts. And they might have been 68 to 70. You're not going to see that anymore as often. Now that TRT and the knowledge of it is so mainstream. And you want to hear something a little off view also of this? This is a sick story, and I always tell this because the view of this. So the concierge doctor I first used to go to, he was like Doogie House. He was the best doctor I ever went to, but he was a little crazy. He had a sleeve tattoo. He had a bunch of Colombian girls running around his office, but he was the best doctor. Why? Because other patients went to him, and he cured and found out problems like an underlying like disease that was initiated from a tick, was a form of Lyme disease, and other things that no other doctor could I ever identify. So when I first started to go to him, even with me, before I get to that, is, you know, I started to be concerned with my health, my cardiovascular health. I used steroids for X amount of years, 8 jars of mayonnaise, and what's going on? So I'm like, do I have any plaque in my arteries? I'm just curious. I didn't really know too much about HDL, LDL ratio. I didn't even know that yet. He goes, you see these markers here? I'd be surprised if you had any plaque in your arteries due to these enzyme conversions, right? Anyway, long story short, I did have actually some plaque in my arteries. I had a high calcium score to the point of like nervous. I was shitting for a week. Oh my God, don't move, don't talk. It was high. I went for an actually angiogram, right? Because I was freaking out. Went to a high level doctor at St. Francis Heart Hospital in New York. I have virtually no plaque in my arteries. I was like, what is that? He's like, it probably wasn't misreading. Due to your genetic predisposition to not there's no heart attacks in my family, the plaque gets built up elsewhere in your chest cavity and not inside your arterial walls. Me being neurotic, I learned everything about cardiovascular health, but I'm a lucky motherfucker in that, you know, scenario. I don't have any plaque in my arteries. But on the other story with TRT, what he was saying, he goes, is your wife on board with you doing TRT? I said, yeah, why? He goes, no, I have to ask that question. I have angry wives come in here sometimes. I said, well, why is that? He goes, because you fuck up the evolution of what their subconscious wants. Explain, I said. He's like, some women in subconscious, they wait for the male spouse to start to dive down in hormone and sit in the corner like a little puppy dog so they could go out to steakhouses and do their thing with men. I said, are you fucking with me? He goes, no, I swear. He goes, they get angry women come in here because their husband's a revved up hormone animal. This and that, all he wants to do is bang. He has all this energy now. This is fucking up my plans. I was like, you are sick, dude. I never even thought of that. Word, swear to God, bro.
What, is he the sick one, or is it all the women?
Little
like
both.
He's just the middleman here, right?
He was just telling me that story, and I was like, wow, I never even thought of that. And I'm sure you didn't either.
No. I'm still kind of trying to process it.
Think about that, what I just told you. He goes, angry women come in there really like, what is going on? What'd you give him? I don't want him to come off of it, because you're fucking up their plans for him to start to calm down and chill so they can start going out. I was
I mean,
like, wow.
that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an extreme doctor.
No,
Yeah,
but,
sure.
but the point I'm going to make is
the best.
there's, Marek Health is one of the sponsors of the podcast, and there are physicians out there that understand all these things, the lifestyle and all these other type of things that are components of all this. And while they will help people mitigate damage that are just blasting shit, because that's a real subset of the TRT. Actually, I would say TRT now is kind of redefined. Is a gram a week is TRT for some reason. It's been, but anyhow, it's before you didn't talk about steroids if you used, now it's just TRT, but nobody's really coming out saying, here's what I really do. But having, a physician that understands the full spectrum of all that, because they may not need that. They may just the lifestyle changes or whatnot, and labs matter, with all this as well. So there are companies out there. I mean,
Marek's great.
There are companies out there that can help people that it kind of blows my mind to a certain degree that with the availability that's there, to be able to forget about dosing and all that, just optimize. Because I can say for myself, there were times I was taking so much shit that it was negatively impacting for sure. Where if it was just more optimal and it would have been way less, then the outcome would have been way greater, which is still kind of hard for me to comprehend, when you grow up through that mindset of all that people still will push back. Like, no, man, I'm just going to listen to the fucking, training partner in the gym or
the bro,
whoever they're buying the shit from, because they do it and all that other kind of shit. I'm like, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind.
With I was saying this earlier. So when they start to introduce dosages or exogenous testosterone into an individual who needs it, you always start low at the lowest effective dose. You don't know the individual's androgen sensitivity to the drug, because I've seen on the other end, some people respond to 80 milligrams like me on 400. You don't start blasting 200 milligrams of that. They might get all kinds of side effects, etc. Anxiety, estrogen conversion, DHT, you don't know. Always start low and high. And even with HCG use, you could initiate even and clomiphene does, but HCG use could be even replaced as a TRT. There's all different dosages. So even there's a dosage to keep when on cycle, to keep the testosterone stable into testes to offset infertility. Okay, so you can rebound easier. Second could be initiate testosterone production for like a TRT replacement. And then we go for fertility. That's an even higher dosage. But you can't do that for too long, because then you start to initiate something called the negative feedback loop. And it cuts off the positive what's supposed to do, and you taper down. So even to that, there's all different dosages. But TRT, honestly, should be injecting should be the overall last option for most men, only if necessary,
I mean, on your profile, like you mentioned, you've made a couple of posts about tren and talking about how terrible it was for you in many ways. Some may look through some of your posts about TRT, talking about the things that you should be doing prior, and talking about your bad experiences with steroids, and almost say you're anti-steroid, some kind of name like that on it. But what I would put out there is, obviously you've got this side now where steroids are kind of proliferating through society. And as a result of that, do you think we are just becoming blind to the downsides of them? Just because, if everyone around you drinks whatever number of pints or smokes whatever number of cigarettes a day, you just blindly do it. You follow or whatever, you just assume it's normal. So do you think it's actually more important possibly now than it's ever been to actually be out there just saying, well, look, pro-choice, do whatever the hell you want, but I'm going to be here to tell you that it's not all sunshine and rainbows over here.
This is what it is with steroid use, right? There are medications that can be used safely and correctly. It's the abuse of anything that will fuck you up. You could drink too much apple juice and get diabetes, too much red meat, whatever it may be. People who aren't educated like us, when you say the word anabolic steroid, they think of fucking smoking something out of tin foil, which it's not. These are all medications that have been replaced by better medications due to side effects. But if used correctly and wisely, they're not harmful. You drink every fucking weekend. You drink, that's causing more damage than 2 to 3 conservative cycles a year. Let's be fucking real. You drink this every weekend, and you eat a fuck ton of bad food. You think you're healthier than the guy using 3 cycles a year on a conservative dosage? Fuck no. Do you agree? You obviously agree.
Yeah, but I think,
I'm just enlightening people.
No, I think a better way to answer what you're asking is you would be dealing with the responsibility would fall on my demographic, right? People have been taking it for decades, right? And, that's a demographic that came up to where it wasn't acceptable to even speak about it because the fact of the matter is it's still illegal, right? So the people weren't, the reason why people weren't talking about using it isn't all because of the social consequences that would follow from it. It was fucking illegal, right? And I know a lot of people that got arrested and a handful of people that actually did jail time, for distribution of small amounts of steroids. And in a lot of the cases, it wasn't even distribution. It was just their stash, but
it was enough to constitute that.
Right. So you're dealing with a mindset that's already been kind of conditioned that we're not going to talk about all this. And then, they get to an older age to where, if I can sit here and say, yes, I had fertility issues. Big time, right? Both my kids are adopted, so is that comfortable for me to say? No, right? Because that would come at the expense. Does that mean I don't love my kids? There's all that shit that kind of plays into all that. And I know a lot of fucking people, that couldn't have kids, right? So when you're talking about the HCG and all that other kind of stuff, the way I would have viewed that was, how many bottles of test can I buy for the amount of money I'm going to put into the HCG? Like, fuck that. I'm going to do this, so the result could permanent, infertility damages is because of all that. I'm an exception. I'll say it. You know how many people would be willing to sit there and say, here's the price that I paid, from doing that now, right? Because I could also lean into, hip replacements and all the other type of things, and these are friends of mine, right? So heart issues, there's a lot of things that are cumulative over the years. Every one of those things I could come back and attribute to not being because of the anabolics. 100%. Right. The fertility thing. Well, my wife couldn't have kids either. She never used anything. So, it's the hip, it wasn't the heavy training. It's just genetics. Right. So if you speak to anybody that's in my demographic, that's what you're going to hear. You're not going to hear them say, well, it was because of the steroids. And I'm not saying that myself. It's a part of it. It's a part of it. That all that plays into that. But are those conversations happening? No. Should they be? Yes. Right. Because the 20-year-old, 25-year-old that's coming on now I wasn't. They're not worried about fucking having kids. 10 years later, that may change where it's pretty simple on what they can do at that time to kind of mitigate that. Where those conversations were happening. But at the same time, there's not people coming out saying, look, had I done this, I wouldn't be in that position. Right. But see how it gets weird when I'm speaking about adoption. You know what I'm saying? Because I love my kids. I think that's the best thing that ever happened to me was the adoption rather than my own, so those conversations are going to be really fucking hard to find where people are going to come out and say that because they want to justify. Right. And it's not so much the justifying. I knew the potential risks that were associated and was 100% fine taking those. If I died before I was 50, it was expected. I was willing to die for all this. Right. So it's not like this, big awakening that, oh shit, now I have to deal with all this. I didn't know this could potentially be the problem. It's like, fuck it. I don't care. I'm doing this now. If I need to fucking walk on a cane the rest of my life, I'll worry about that, when I'm fucking 50 or 60. Well, some of those cards come true. You know what I'm saying? So it's I like to think that I accepted what those cards were, and never in my mind at any point did I think one of them or two or three wouldn't ream its head. I was okay with all that. But I think that's kind of answering what you're saying, but that's why those conversations aren't happening, because it's going to be very uncomfortable. Right. And there's going to be denial as well, because you see it. I know you guys see it. If you're speaking to people that have been on for a long time, and they have any health issue, the no goddamn way did they 40 years of anabolics have anything to play with that.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
Right. Then the counter to that was whatever physician they're going to see is going to say that 100% was the cause.
Yeah.
And that's not true either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it kind of plays into that whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, there needs to be more conversations about that.
Mm-hmm.
But
they're difficult conversations to have.
Well, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Because it's nobody wants to sit there and kind of look back and say, you know what, I fucked up. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm not saying that I fucked up because I knew what those kinds of, I'm denying it right fucking now. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm validating every goddamn thing that I'm saying because of that, that reason. But that needs to be out there, because if it's not out there from the people that actually paid the prices for those type of things or exchanged the risk for those things, then what's left is the physician or the doctor or the TRT specialist or whatever fucking doing this fear tactic bullshit, which only drives that meathead type of person
to stay away.
No, to take more, right? When you were talking about that one meth shit, whatever the fuck it was, you know, in my brain, I'm still like, fuck, I wish I would have had that when I was training.
That's what I thought.
You know what I'm saying? Like if I could go back over again, I would fucking take Trident Hallow testing. Yeah. You know, I didn't have access to that and I would take a fucking lot of it. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when you put that risk thing out there to the right mindset, you're going to associate the greater the risk, the higher the fucking benefit. Sure. Like I did, you know, and probably still fucking do to a certain degree, because that's the first thought that came to my mind. Fuck, I should have took that. You know, that kind of stuff.
See, what I try to do, what you said is about, I speak about the pros and cons, but I don't push it and I don't talk too negative. I just speak about the reality.
Yes.
And why I educate guys in this, because I had the negative issue with fertility. I was fucking sucked. And I do not want guys to go through what I did. And you could avoid that.
I went through two in vitro.
Yeah, but I'm trying to help guys. You know what I had to do? I'm lucky, bro. I built so much HCG, registering 0, 0, 0. I'm like, fuck. He goes, we got to go in. I was like, what do you mean? We got to do a sperm extraction. Someone else I know did this. They go in. I said, well, how do you know? You know, testicle. I go, how do you know? They go, it looks like the fat black tortellini noodle, but it'd be in a bowl of pasta. I said, all right, let's do it. Fuck it. All right. I was in. This is the exact fucking situation, experience. I go in. They slice your balls open and pull out the sperm, right? We're going to try, she said. Looking, laying down. The anesthesiologist was telling me, you know, steroids are bad for you, this and that. I'm thinking, you're a fucking, as soon as I start thinking you're an idiot, I was waking up. That's, you know, you're out. All I remember when I woke up, I was like, oh, my balls, like fucking an NFL punter kicked me, bro.
Oh my God.
A nurse was walking back and forth and by myself. I'm going, oh my God, that's all I wondered. I went down, I looked, I had a bra holding just my balls with my ass out and everything. I'm like, who put this on me? One was, I was wondering. And two, I'm like, oh my God. She goes, wait, she gave me 2 Percocets. It was like eating Skittles, did nothing. They shoot me with morphine, right? I'm walking out to my car and my balls were hitting my legs back to back.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing so fucking hard.
You don't even know.
It would suck so bad.
It was terrible.
Oh my God.
But I'm lucky in the fact, you know, in vitro, my wife, she's like a fucking, she makes Brian Urlacher's my wife. She's like a fucking alpha dude. She made like a football team of eggs. I had enough fertilized to field 2 football teams, right? So me being the nerd that I am with this, so we did in vitro. I was talking to the in vitro doc. You know, there's a certain circle of fucking level of docs to go to. So I'm asking all questions. I must have been that annoying fucking client. I'm like, how do you know which sperm to put together? He goes, oh, we look for the perfect ones. I'm like, so why doesn't everyone do in vitro? He's like, oh, nature has its own way. I'm like, nah, I don't believe that. I breeded the A team fucking together and froze those. But yeah, we had successful pregnancies, but I'm lucky in that sense, you know?
And
I went through that. I don't want guys to go fucking get their ball sliced open. It was terrible. No one thinks of that though.
Well, the cost is ridiculous to where we went through that tise. And the way that we circumvented some of the costs back then, because the medications are really the biggest cost. Sure. We went on a cruise to Mexico and bought all the medication there for a fraction of the price, or you know, and so that kind of helped offset that. But it's expensive. So looking at the cost of doing that twice, you know, is
How
very
many bottles
low.
of test could you buy?
Well, yeah, but that's not what I was thinking at the time.
No, exactly.
Like at that time, I was
changed.
thinking now that HCG cost isn't really that great.
Did you take HMG also? Follicle stimulating hormone?
Yeah.
So HMG, like HCG relatively is cheap in comparison. HMG, you know what that is, obviously, right? It's, I think it was about $75 or $100 a shot 3 times a week for months. That's where it adds up.
Yeah.
It was thousands of dollars. Lucky, my wife's insurance, teacher's insurance, covers all the IVF.
Yeah.
except
Now
for the
over,
certain
this is
medications.
kind of the shitty part of all this. Over a year, we did get it to come back up. So we got it up, froze, and all this other kind of stuff. Then after that's when we found out my wife wasn't able to have it, right? And that, yeah, because now my brain at that time was like,
did all
fuck,
this.
I just wasted a year of my prime fucking competing life. You know, we should have tested this shit first, and I wouldn't have had to gone through all this crap.
You just went on the assumption it's got to be me.
Yeah,
It's gotta
because the
be me.
training sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other side of that is while you're
Training
going through
while you're
all that.
on? It's like,
No, while you're going through the in vitro and all that fucking.
no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's fucking, what do you mean being off? Is
You're
what you
being
mean.
off and taking all that shit.
The way
I'm
I put it, I go steroids and training is like milk and cookies. Training without, it's like fucking drinking a Snapple iced tea.
Oh, the fucking! I'm crying watching a fucking Downy commercial.
Yeah.
You know, it's like whatever the fuck. Like it's like what the fuck? Like who the hell am I right now? And it just kept getting worse.
How'd you
and
feel
worse.
overall? You felt terrible?
Fucking terrible.
See, I didn't feel that bad.
Terrible.
I didn't feel that
You had
bad.
the magic shots though.
I didn't
HMG.
feel that bad. I got a little fatter and but like I was okay. The only thing that was lost was my insatiable sex drive dissipated, which I was so used to was probably down to normal, like a normal person, but I don't like it like that. I like a fucking disgusting animal all the time. I was so used to that all the time. You know what I mean? But that was the only really negative physical I felt of it. So I was lucky in that sense. Lucky in multiple areas because I know guys that couldn't have kids.
Yeah,
either.
no, one interesting thing that happened, because this is probably like a 9-month process, is towards the end of that time period, I like to call this a reverse intervention. And then we were doing board presses. I remember this distinctly. And I got fucking stapled with 405 on a 2-board, just stapled. And this would be something that would be a warm-up set.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So my best was like 540 or something like that on that. And I remember them having to pull it off. And I sat at the end of the bench. I'm depressed as fuck. Like, what the fuck? I mean, everything felt bad about the whole thing. Right. And then I look up and I'm not going to name who they were, but 5 of the guys I was training with. And all I heard was, Dave, we need to talk. Right. So then there's this whole conversation that's like going on, and I'm just getting fucking more mad. And it's like, fuck all this kind of shit. And so there's a fucked up point you go. So later that night, I'm like, you know what? Fuck all this. You know, and I jam fucking 6 cc's of test, so 2 full syringes of the whole thing. Then I remembered, oh, fuck. I'm supposed to get my sperm count checked.
Oh no!
You know, in like next 2 weeks or whatever. Like, and I'm like, oh, I just fucked this all up. Then when I went and got it checked, boom, it spiked up. You know, and from like 0, because it was like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, like 10 million. Right. So then when I get the results back, I'm calling my doctor. Right. Actually, it was Serrano, so he has no problem with me talking about this story. I'm like, they're like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, all I had to do was take shit, and it brings my stuff back, right? And I remember the conversation because when I went in his office next time, and he's like, couple things here to keep in mind. Like, one, that may not have been the catalyst. It may have already been there.
Yes.
Or higher. You know, before you did that. Or 2, you fucked your shit up so bad for using it for so long that your body doesn't really know how to function without. Yeah. So it's one of those too. And so that kind of led to, so I can get a prescription for this now. You know, I mean, we're going way back. So that was my story there, you know, with that, because that whole time I'm like, again, I should have never gone off because it was, you know, I knew people, and it's not birth control. We should put that out there straight up, because I know a lot of people that were taking so much shit that was, oh, my girlfriend's pregnant. And we would be like, dude, listen, there's no way. You're like, she's cheating on your ass. Like, there's no way. With the shit that no way. Right? And then all of a sudden, like, no, I'm telling, like, you don't know for sure. Like, somebody was poking her and you don't know
That's
about
fucked
it.
up,
Right? Because, but that was just that assumption, with all that. And I still think it was kind of true with a couple of the people. But, so that would be shitty birth control, because I've known way too many people that have gotten people pregnant.
I know guys who never even use HCG. They're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Come off?
Yeah.
Nothing?
What did Ali Gilbert say? He was like, what do you call the bodybuilder that thinks test is birth control? Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
For the majority, though, it is birth control.
Yeah.
But you can't guarantee, it's not 100% foolproof.
Sure. Yes.
I could know that.
So to flip that a little bit, we talked about like the downsides being underplayed, but to flip that a little bit, do you think that steroid usage, sensible, whatever sensible means, is demonized unfairly compared to other, should we say, habits? Like, we've got the Zyn packets here on the table. We've got alcohol, we've got cigarettes, we've got even shitty food habits, right? Do you think that it is unfairly demonized as a particular habit, drug use, whatever you want to call it,
Well, one, yeah. I mean, to other things.
Well, I would say less now than it used to be.
Less now, definitive, because of testosterone mainstream, 100%. People still are not educated on it. The majority, I actually was having this conversation with somebody recently. We're in the same circle. We see the same people. We're numb to it. All right. The majority of people don't know anything about sex. They hear steroids, they automatically think drugs.
Yeah.
Bad, negative, heroin, cocaine, steroids, group the same. They don't view it like we do. And I was just having this conversation about, I think, was it steroid use it might have been with? But my friend is a wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy. I said, your travels, your life, where do you go? Jiu-jitsu gym, work, boat, wife, whatever. We're talking about body composition and weight. I go, he stepped out. I go, did you ever go to Disney? That's where you really see, because the majority of people, I said, I bet you the majority of people there, forget about this is where the mindset is, right? The majority of people have the same mindset. Oh, that's what it was about. How many people knew who John Jones was? I'm like, in his world, I'm like, everyone knows who John Jones is.
Yeah.
Dude, you go up to anybody at Disney, I bet 19 out of 20 don't know who John Jones is. He's like, no way. I go, yes. Yes way. That's people's mindset. They don't know how to eat. Mindset about steroids. It's the same exact thing. The majority of people would automatically correlate steroids with negative. So to answer your question, the negative on the conservative consumption, yes, most people think negative on it. Do I think it's a bad thing? I mean, if used correctly, like I said, and wisely, conservative. This is what I try. I'm not like speaking pro or against it, but they can be used safely. And people are going to use it. Let's be fucking real about it. No matter what, they're going to get it and do it, right? You could use the compound safely. That's what I'm trying to tell them. And to avoid problems and not listen to social media with fucking 3,000 mgs of test and this. I'm like,
because we've got a whole world of professional, the Olympics is on, right? And we can't point fingers and say who is taking what or whatever, but we have a whole world of professional athletes who probably are all using things that cannot be seen to be associated or say anything on the subject because their contracts have gone, the sponsors, their whole career is ruined. Like, how many of us can say that about any other type of drug? Do you know what I mean? Like, you get caught snorting a line of cocaine. If you're a policeman, maybe that's a problem. Do you know what I mean? But like, for people like that, their whole career is tarnished forever because it just seems to be demonized more heavily compared to anything else that you could probably equate the harmfulness to over a lifetime, at least, and like, even though it's probably more prevalent and for the most part probably well used, especially in the sports professional realm, so why is there so much hate then on it as opposed to everything else?
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch, because to go back to our 70-year-old's going to be taking, is going to become more widespread. It's going to be interesting to watch because there wasn't really this huge financial incentive, for a drug that's basically generic at this point, cheap. But now because it's being used more and more and more and more, I'm going to hypothesize and guess there's other things in the works, to be able to help with longevity. fat loss we already know, with GPT, whatever the fuck they're fucking called, the GLPs, right?
Yeah.
So we're already seeing that there, right? And that's just going to keep advancing because now there's a financial incentive for all those things to advance. Yes. So it's in 20 years, will people be taking tests? My guess is no, they're going to be taking something else.
Really?
That would be better than what the test is, right? Maybe less of the sides or whatever it's going to be, because there's a financial incentive now.
Oh, they're going to make something that's better than test.
Well, don't they have to, right? Because once something becomes pretty much generic, the price is going to drop. They make something new, boom, the price can go up.
I don't know if I agree with you on that because, like, testosterone, right, is a naturally occurring hormone in the body. You can't really replace that. The human body is the human body. They're going to make something that replaces in the body that testosterone can do. I don't really.
Well, what's the precursor to testosterone? Like if we're to go backwards on that pathway, right?
Well, if you go back far enough, cortisol.
But like
pregnant alone.
I don't know if I agree with you on that. Maybe they will do something with the monetizing wise, like a different strand. It's the most optimal strand which responds to your DNA. You got the generic, but this is the A team one where you enhance your length of your life and cardiovascular disease. And
no,
that's the only thing.
See the point. But I also agree that there's definitely the possibility that you can create something that binds to specific receptors better than testosterone.
Yeah.
Like it won't yield the same benefits on cognitive and overall.
Well, if it
wellness.
binds to the same receptors in theory, right? What I'm saying is if you can create something that has an even stronger binding affinity, then you can take less and get the same.
You're talking about muscular hypertrophy. You're talking about just
whatever, you cannot separate a hormone from its function, right? It does all of them regardless of whether you want all of them or not. We call them side effects, but actually they're effects. So putting testosterone into a system does A, B, C, D, E, and F. So if we create a testosterone that
with none of the side, with none of the other effects,
which maybe binds to the androgen receptor even more strongly.
With nothing on the prostate, nothing.
Yeah, maybe the aromatase enzyme can't bind to it though, because it's got a certain structure.
DHT for your hair loss.
And things like that, really at this point, the possibilities are probably endless in truth, aren't they?
Yeah.
So imagine you create a non-aromatizing testosterone.
It can be done. They can make square watermelons and you see this, they could cut off someone's head now, attach it with AI. I'm sure they can make a testosterone that does, like they can't cure cancer. Of course they can make a testosterone with no estrogen conversion, no aromatase.
Yeah, or you can create one that doesn't convert to any DHT if someone is DHT sensitive. And
I could see. That's a good point.
Then you get personalized testosterone. Oh, you're DHT sensitive. Don't worry, we've got that. Oh, your aromatases, you've got a high aromatase enzyme. Don't worry. You don't need to take.
That's a good point, bro.
You don't need to take Arimidex and stuff anymore because we've got this.
Yeah. So my general answer is yes.
Yes.
But it will be it may not actually be that.
Sure.
It'd be something of what
it wouldn't be Cypionate.
Yeah.
It'd be something.
Sure.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah. And
I can see that.
I would assume it would have just the financial incentive alone.
Wish they had that now. Wish they had it before I lost my hair.
Well, exactly. Yes.
But then the question also becomes if everyone ends up on TRT, so it's almost a given that like 35 plus, without 40 plus is taking testosterone. Where does that end? It's like, is that enough? Or do we decide that, no, we need people even more functional? You're
going to make an alpha, you ever see that movie with they made all the perfect human?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to say?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, you're all on testosterone now and you're working for longer, heart diseases come down or whatever. What else could we put everyone on?
Oh, of course.
But also, again, to that, I think the majority of people, if you go to Disney, are not going to care to even go down that line.
No, that's probably fair. That would be the thing that stops it from happening.
I think the only thing that people in our circle would be, that's a better testosterone. And the people behind us are younger. That's going to be available for them. But those people at Disney are going to still stay at Disney.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of plays into when I'll have the conversation about AI, but he's afraid of AI and all this other kind of stuff. And I'll always circle back and say, you understand, most people don't even know how to search Google, right? Right. So
what are we worried about?
Yeah. So there's going to be a subset, which is going to, definitely take advantage of all that. But when you go to Disney, that's a great quote. When you go to Disney, most of the people there probably don't even know how to use their phones.
Yeah.
I mean, they know how to go on Instagram and do all this other kind of stuff, but ask them to change a setting, turn notifications off or some shit. They're handing you their phone. You know what I'm saying? So it would be a false assumption to think that everybody's going to be using, AI and have Neuralink.
In our world,
in
our world, yes, and maybe might get a little bit bigger. Yeah, the world, the outer edge, but like the majority, the whole entire universe, no, I don't think it's going to change that much. No, I don't think so.
I mean, I think it's going to change quite a lot in our industry, AI with programming and stuff like that. That's going to, like you said, I think programming may become a dead skill. Almost, unfortunately.
AI is not foolproof. I'm sure. No, it's definitely not. I've tried that thing inside and out. I'm sure it makes holes.
But what I'm saying is, with the rate that technology develops, if you'd said 20 years ago, there's this thing called ChatGPT that does this, you'd be like, come on.
It's Jetsons.
Yeah, you've been like, come on now. Like, what movie have you been watching? So, like, if ChatGPT exists now, what's 10 years? What's 20 years?
Right.
Yeah. What's to say that, your ChatGPT personal trainer is not attached to your smartwatch and it monitors your heart rate, your force output, which is a little dot on the bar which measures force output, and it's like, oh, we need to adjust your weight down on the next set.
We're going to be obsolete. But nothing could also replace this, right? The human touch. So just say you get a robot who knows way more than me, smart, can design a program in half the time and in more detail. You can't speak like me. You can't make a robot like, who knows, maybe in 30 years, but you know what I'm saying? That's lost. And when I realize with my clients, they don't come to me just for the training. They come to me for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of that in-person touch. And even my online clients, it's the in-person me, the human touch. Even my coaches are specifically picked by me. They got to match personalities. You can't duplicate that.
No, you can't. And that's why I think it would hurt. It will hurt the ones that are just superficial a lot more. The ones who care, have a lot of interaction with their clients, create bonds, like we talked about, the guy that you can tell it how it is to, those coaches are probably safe, right? Because you can't, I don't believe you can probably replicate that. But the guys who are just like, here's your spreadsheet for the week, they're probably fucked.
I think they're already fucked.
Those are the younger guys.
Yeah.
I think the more guys who are my age demographic with life experience and personality, and also there's sometimes a question, I should have did this 10 years ago. I couldn't have did it 10 years ago because one, the way I grew in my life and how I interact with people in my age demographic and even younger, that I couldn't do it 10 years ago. But the younger generation, just due to the fact of not being exposed to everything that I have or we were, that's lost and they don't have that. Maybe AI will replace them.
Well, business is a weird thing, though, too, because if we look at programming just in general, the history of that, 10 years ago, I'm not sure, but whenever ebooks were the thing, like ebooks were the big thing, the program ebook, like here's a 12-week program or whatever it was. And that would sell for $20, $50, right? So you would assume, let's use that as this benchmark. Right. And then you move forward, and a lot of the people that you're talking about are essentially just taking that 12-week program and then sending it to somebody by email every week. Pretty much the same thing. Yeah. But now over the period of that 12 weeks, they're able to generate $500 for basically the same thing. Yeah. It didn't advance, and for a lot of them, there's really no correspondence either. Here's your program. Here's your program. So that's kind of a little bit of a counter, because I would say that went backwards, right? Yeah. Same product, 5 times the price, but it works, in the business world because there's a higher margin, right? Greater revenue being done that. But in my brain, it went backwards, right? Because you can't see the whole thing. You can't see what's going to come in that next week or whatever it's going to be, because it's being fed every single week. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch how it unfolds. All right, let's take a bathroom break real quick.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Are we done selling this?
I'm done. All right. Guys, this is the new elitefts.com box squat box. It weighs 73 pounds, I'm told.
It weighs 3 pounds.
You've got your story. I've got mine. He says 3. I say 73. This is absolutely amazing, guys. No joke. You can box squat on this. I'm going to box squat it tomorrow. This sucker is strong, ridiculously strong. and it is light, guys. No joke. You can carry this anywhere, put this in your gym. Anybody can use this. It's extremely affordable as well. I really can't believe it. So I'm sure they're going to tell you all the details down below or the side or somewhere, but this thing is absolutely amazing. 73 pounds, guys. 73 pounds. All right, guys, I'm here at Elite FTS. I'm at the compound. Nobody is watching right now, so bear with me. I found some bands that I need really, really bad. I'm going to throw them in my bag and take them home with me, so don't tell anybody. Bands are absolutely great. If you're looking for the safest way to train to become fast, to become explosive, become strong, safety, 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 safety. Watch some videos about using bands. Why should you buy the Elite FTS bands? I swear. Promise you guys, these bands will last longer than any other bands you will buy anywhere. They're a little more expensive. They're going to last a heck of a lot longer. elitefts.com. Get your bands just like I am. See ya.
All right, guys, you like the content that we put out through Elite FTS. If it's the podcast, extra content, 20 years of being on YouTube, so there's a lot of different content there. We set up a membership YouTube channel, and with the membership YouTube channel, what you'll get is early release on all the podcasts, so you'll get access to it before everybody else. Those will also all be ad-free, so you won't have any interruptions and can listen straight through, and we'll have exclusive content, such as AMAs, to where we'll take all your questions and then answer them for you guys. So take a moment, join the channel. Is that what it is? Join the channel, join the YouTube. Just hit the join button and help support the podcast, and we'll help you. All right, we're going to jump back into this. You said you had a story that you were telling him that you wanted to tell right before or during the break.
Just now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I totally brain farted.
You said your friend, it was like high school was being like Goodwill Hunting
Oh,
with your
okay.
friends. And,
Okay. So, like my boys I grew up with, you can see blue collar, Goodwill Hunting, same thing. And where I grew up, you have the other side, which are, rich kids. Totally different. Friends with some of them. He was talking about entitlement and just not earning or whatever. And I can't really wrap my mind around it because I just don't understand. Even to this day, even though I know entitlement, everyone feels entitled, even at whatever age, I just can't grasp it. And, I explain to like certain guys, I go, yo, you can't buy the fitness no matter what you pay me. You have to fucking earn it and put the work in. Because I hear some of these people, what they say and the information they tell me, trainer, this, that, I'm like, they're looking to buy the answer instead of actually fucking grabbing their balls and doing it. This is something you cannot buy for the most part. You can't buy it. You have to fucking put the work in. Even if it's easier for some people or harder, it's something you can't get around. And some people automatically think that you could just purchase it. It doesn't work that way. No matter how good the trainer is, no matter how good the diet is, you got to meet the requirements to get the fucking, to get to point A,
But like we had that conversation earlier about like the guy in the interview who's in shape and what that actually represents. Isn't that why it represents it? For that exact reason that it can't be bought, it can't be given, it can't be passed on, it can't be it can be inherited, I guess. You pick your parents well.
What I'm saying, the majority.
But you know that person has had to go through something.
Yes.
To achieve whatever the end goal is there. And we were talking about how like with people being entitled, sometimes it can be difficult to coach because they feel like they're using you as a coach to almost bypass the hard work element. Well, like, but I've got a really good coach that almost means I don't have to work as hard because my program is better or my diet is better. It's like, no, you work just as hard, but having the better diet and having the better program just means that the rewards you get from the hard work are better, as opposed to toiling on something which isn't effective, if that makes sense. And
it does.
Yeah. Well, it's just a disconnect, right? Because regardless of the person, for the most part, they've had to work for something for an extended period of time. Like most people got through junior high and then moved on to high school. That's 3 years, some places 4 years. Or they've got through high school. It's 3 years, some places 4 years. Or they got through college, that's 4 years, or apprenticeship or whatever it's going to be. All these things take time. Right? And anything, if they love a video game, I'm sure they sucked at it the very first time they played it. Then after a long period of time, they got good at it. Right? And they're just not connecting those dots with things that they have succeeded in and that they have completed. into the fitness realm, right? To where if, as an industry, we can help them connect those dots. Because the discipline is there. I mean, everything that they need, all the tools they need are there because it's expressed itself somewhere else in their life in what they do, right? They're just not connecting it here,
That's
right?
good, actually.
Right. So, which if you go full circle with that would make you wonder with ourselves, what things are we looking to hack that the solution is just time,
Sure.
you know, content or whatever it's going to be, you know, and there's always going to be the outliers that pop or whatever it's going to be. But we know that, you know, from training. There's some people that just start training and they get strong as fuck. You know, it's like it's not fair. Well, the same thing happens if it's social media or content or whatever it's going to be. There's going to be, but it's the tools are there. They just don't know how to use them in this foreign space as we wouldn't know how to use tools in this foreign space.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's a great point.
It is a great point.
Yeah.
That makes me think of like in those scenarios, you could almost turn around and say like for yourself, it's like, well, you've worked hard enough to create an environment where you can afford to hire me as a coach with your expendable income. So you obviously have some degree of discipline, hard work, consistency. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to afford to hire me. You know, otherwise you'd be sat there eating cereal 3 times a day with barely being able to pay your bills. So
That was a really good point you brought up.
Yeah.
that was
Really good. I
it's-
never even connected it like that.
well,
We
we
did
don't.
something.
Because we all live in these bubbles, right? And you got to kind of like step out, like look at it broadly, you know, and see that we do the same things, you know, just in other areas, you know, and feel entitled, like, God damn it, I should be able to do this. And it's like, okay, now wait a minute. If this is all I did, then how long would it take, you know, to be able to actually do this if I'm not the outlier? Then it's like, oh shit. Okay. Maybe I need to work on skills. You know, it falls back into the basic shit. You know, the
So
consistency.
again,
and
if you put the time in to something, you're going to get better at it.
Yeah.
You know, the one.
Well, yes and no, right? Because you can have shitty practice. And
True.
just be shitty, and that's where a coach can
keep
help.
spinning the wheels
help.
in the same,
You know,
stupid
coach,
circle.
mentors. But I can still take that and say that's still true in any other discipline too.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so it's, you get to a sticking point, then you got to look to somebody that's been through that, you know, as you're saying, with the experience and what other discipline that you're trying to figure it out with. And maybe they help, maybe they don't. You know, that doesn't mean that it's not the right path. It just might be the wrong answer, where there's always different answers for all that. But typically, if somebody's got enough experience, they've seen enough people in any discipline, to have a pretty good shot at where to go.
Compare it to yourself in a situation like something that you're not the best at and you don't know. And how I look at it is like, just say my education before with like social media, right? Just say I did try to do it on my own, which I was intelligent enough not to. I'd be spinning in the same fucking nonsensical practice and not expanding my education. But what I did, I hired someone. And what it did, it broadened my fucking education dramatically. And I myself, even though he managed it, I myself got a lot better at it. That's my lane where I could even just, you know, use myself as.
Yes.
Just
So,
say I kept trying. It'd be dumb practice. What am I doing? Nothing.
So if
And I did that for years. It was dumb practice.
So if I take that example and turn it on its head, say you don't do that, but you just keep posting, you keep doing it all the time. After a couple of years, you're gonna be like, "Fuck, this isn't fucking fair. I know more than anybody else." Now you're entitled.
Yeah, sure.
You see what I'm saying? Right? Because I should have more than this because the content is X, Y, and Z, and so there it reels its head. So it's the same thing. It's just connecting it, you know, with that, and fucked up to think about, right? Because then you wonder how many things you're ignorant about,
A lot.
which is most things.
Yes.
So I'll segue out of this. Were there as I start to get too depressed about this thing, were there any topics you wanted to cover I didn't bring up?
We talked about a lot of things. We talked about construction, you know, steroids, you know, we broad spectrum of that. I think we covered everything. I'm not really, I
wanted to ask you something about MMA athletes because we skipped over the MMA a little bit.
Because that's not why I did that. It's not really my lane anymore.
I understand
That's
that.
why.
But what I'm saying, I just want to ask something about your experience with them and being around them. Obviously, sports performance training helps, and that's why it exists. But there's something about, in my opinion, there are certain skills that you cannot just train. So, like, in my opinion, and this is why I want to see if you kind of felt the same, the ability to throw a fastball at 90 miles an hour, the ability to throw a punch is something that has to exist to some degree inherently. As in, you cannot take someone who has completely no idea inherently how to throw a punch and turn them into a championship boxer. You can take someone who's naturally got that flow and refine and improve. But in my opinion, there are certain skill sets like baseball pitch and a throw that it just seems to be something that athletes either have or don't. And I just want to ask, in your experience, did you also find
the
that?
number one thing is this? That's the number one thing. And why I know this is from doing it is that even if the guy could be really talented, really skilled, super light, super fast, when you could see someone change as soon as you punch them in the face or kick them in the leg, if they're in or out, you could see what they're made of, if they're meant to fight or not, 100%. Physical skill, just say, of course, coordination and all that other stuff. You could hone that and make it better, all right? Even with lifting, whatever it may be. But the brain is the first thing I thought of, and the will is the number one thing. And of course, you have to have some skill.
Yeah.
But you can make that better. The one thing is the head. That's the one thing I have to say. They all have the same.
Because no one's not going to get hit.
Dude, my MMA fighters, they never, this is the one thing. Most of the guys I have never say, how many we have left? None of them ever look for a way out. None of them. As I start to broaden into Gen Pop a little bit, how many we have left? I went, you fucking pussy. I've never asked for that, ever. Even for I never say how, dude, I could be dying doing pads. I'm like, fuck, I hope this is the last one. And then I have two more. But you just fucking do it. They never, ever, ever asked. They'll just listen to you. Okay. Sure. Okay. No matter if I say climb on my roof, jump off, do fucking band, they'll be like, okay.
True.
Gen Pop people go, how many have left? Are we done yet?
So have you ever seen a fighting athlete go from not being able to take a hit to being someone who's bulletproof like that? Or again, do you think that's an instinctual thing where it's like they walk in the gym on day one, they either take it reasonably well, or you can tell there's someone that's like, I'm sorry.
I could see more of my experience, not so much in the skills training of fighting. I just know firsthand on me doing it and sparring some people, the amateur level I did, not professional. I could see it more in the gym area. What they have a no break will. Okay. Like they'll do everything cardio wise, this puke, do it again, never ever stop. That's the one thing that it's insane, right? Other guys obviously not. In the skill space, I could only tell you my experience. I've sparred guys that look like melted butter who didn't have any skill, and I punched him in the face and he smiled and looked at me and came back even harder. I went, I'm fucked. I'm in for a long, I swear. And other guys, you think they're shifty and light, you punch them in the face, kick them in the leg, you see them shut down inside. They don't step forward anymore. That's, I'm picturing someone right now.
Yeah, sure.
I hit him with a 3. I'm like, oh, he looked at me and he got mad. I went, oh man. Yeah, I swear to God.
Because, and I don't want to downplay the place of performance training, but it's just, I think there are some athletic abilities, and you could argue whether that's an athletic ability or whatever, but like there are some things that I think are ingrained that you just can't teach.
I think it's coordination. So like boxing, if you did, it's not about throwing punches. Everything's in your feet. Any moron can hit a heavy bag and look like so. It's hitting something that's moving back and forth and something that's throwing back at you. So there is always a level of coordination. And also what you learn also with fighting, it's more reaction and counter to it. It's chess. It really is violent chess. It's exactly the way I could say it. So that's why flow drilling is one of the best ways of training. More than anything, I think flow training, when you see something coming and how you respond and counter to that. And then, of course, you have to have the ability to take the punches and kicks and all that.
Oh, cool. See, what goes through my head when I hear conversations like that is the mindset I agree on. There's something inherently in there. But when we get into the coordination, visual acuity, and all these other skill sets, that kind of falls on the parents and that falls on the school system, because a lot of those things are developed during an early age, right? And there's windows of opportunity to be able to develop those. You can probably go into that more than what I can. And if you skip some of those windows, then
you don't get it back.
You don't get it back. It's sad in a way, because a lot of that's being lost,
Passed over.
Being passed over, but enough is not being passed over that we still have great athletes, at the highest level. So that's what goes through my head when I hear, all kids are out of shape, all this other kind of stuff. Not all, right? Where I don't disagree with softness and all that other kind of stuff, but the way I like to kind of angle that is if you're somebody growing up in that generation, what an opportunity you have, to say when we grew up, if there's 10 people in our group, we got to compete with all 10 of those people, right? And so now if there's only 4 people that really give a shit and the other 6 are just lazy, don't give a fuck about anything else, you have a way better opportunity of being able to succeed because you're competing with less. It doesn't mean you have to work less. I'd say you have to work harder, right? Because training in general across the board has gotten better in all ways.
Yes.
There's no way it hasn't gotten better, from nutrition to training to everything. It's all gotten better. But what an opportunity for the people that want to be able to excel, because there's less people they need to compete against.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as they know that. Right now, if that spreads to all of them, I don't think that ever will, only because this has been going on for decades and we have athletes performing at higher levels than we ever have before. So you got to look at what bubbles up.
Sure.
Well, those are genetic outliers. Well, you know what? There's a lot of genetic outliers that are also fat kids sitting on a couch eating chips all the time. A lot of them, right? So that's a shitty excuse for me, right? Because only the genetic outliers are going to be the ones that are going to do the right things at the right time. No, that's not the case.
Fair. And you made a good point there about there being windows there, because you've probably seen this, right? Like if you take someone on maybe in their 30s or something like that, or maybe their 20s or whatever, if they've done something like dance, gymnastics, martial arts as a kid for an extended period of time, you can almost see it straight away. Like you're like, oh, do a split squat or a bodyweight squat. And it's just the
footwork.
Do you know what I mean? It's like you probably can't even really sum up what it is as such, but it is a fluidity of movement, a type of coordination that okay, you developed that by doing something when you were
so younger. I could translate, not so much with the skills training with fighting, so I get them already. But with coordination, just say even a skilled movement, like a back squat. Some of these guys just know how to do it.
Sure.
Well, that goes back to kind of what I'm talking about, because if you're talking about that early coordination, because any professional athlete I've ever worked with, you show them once and they do it.
Just got it.
That's it.
He's great.
Right. So, and that's not a genetic component, right? That's a component of somebody that was learning the coordinational skills during that developmental window, really was able to hone in on all that. And then you'll have another client that you'll work with that you're just trying to teach them how to root their fucking feet. Right. And it takes forever. Right. Where the pro athletes whatever.
This is just how I stand or whatever.
Yeah, just show me.
Yeah.
Right. And then boom, done.
So there's what I'm thinking about is this one scenario. My pro athletes, you can show them one thing with the feet or whatever, maybe foot stance, or even if I do footwork drills sometimes with them, they just do it and do it way better than I could show them. Then on the other end, I get gen pop guys who are athletes, they said this and that, and I'm trying to show them the foot coordination. I'm like, yo, your brain is not computing this or downloading this the same way, and it's not transferring it over to your feet. That's a genetic thing probably. And it probably never will, no matter how many times they work on it. I go, bro, no, put your foot there. And they couldn't do this. It was pretty easy too. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's a level of, I guess, how your brain absorbs the information and transfer it neurologically through your motor skills. The motor skills just weren't there.
Sure.
And will never be there.
How can people go about reaching you, finding you? Is your Instagram?
My Instagram, at Vin Iuzzi, and you hear my loud mouth spouting out all kinds of stuff on
it's good.
Thank you.
It's definitely good.
So it's a combination of this. I got to say, I'm a person, I never take credit ever. And my media guy's phenomenal. And it's a combination. He wouldn't be where he is, and nor would I be if we're a team. Yeah. So it worked together. Grateful for that.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. So final thoughts is this. As for anabolic steroids and the guys who are going to use, they're going to use it. Just use it conservative. Be safe about it. Don't abuse it. And listen to everything we said here about, mitigating and avoiding negative side effects. So you don't think about them now, but you will years to come. All right. Don't be influenced by social media so much. You see these young guys jamming all the shit and eating 5 fucking Wendy's spicy chicken sandwiches. This will lead to problems. I can guarantee you. All right. And that's pretty much it, man. You know, and for my online clients, you know, I just like to motivate people and teach them an easier, more practical and realistic way to get to your goals, and not listen to all the hogwash and bullshit, and try not to digest all the nonsense, you know, hocus pocus shit on social media. That's pretty much it.
That works. Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again. And we're done. All right, guys. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and click here, 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 or here for more videos.